Can you see me?
Give us 1 second, Commissioner O'Gorman. I do not see you, but it indicates that your camera's off. So let me send
I
you
have
a,
turned
there
it
we
on
go.
a couple times. Okay.
We can see you now.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Some of Commissioner Zepeda, Commissioner Alonso, you have your cameras off. There we go. Commissioner Killebrew is here. Commissioner Johnson. All right. So let me call this meeting to order. It is 5:34. I will begin by taking roll. Commissioner Damo Adamalikan.
Present.
Great. Commissioner Alonso.
Here.
Commissioner Serafina Chavez.
Present.
Great. Commissioner Escobedo.
Here.
Commissioner Harris is not here. Commissioner Kim Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Rachel Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Killebrew.
Here.
Commissioner Lesnar Buxton. He's not here. Commissioner Mary O'Gorman.
Here.
Commissioner Lizzie Rodriguez.
Here.
Commissioner Richard Sander.
Here.
Commissioner Anna Zepeda.
Here.
Commissioner Louis Reynaud.
Here, sir.
And Commissioner Louisa Wood.
I'm here.
Great. So Commissioner Alonso, you had a request that you wanted to speak to the commission. Do you want to let them know what your request is? You're on mute, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Like many around the country, I'm shocked and horrified by recent police homicides around our nation. It is my understanding from Mr. Ramirez that the Brown Act does not require moments of silence to be agendized. And since roll call is now complete, if you would all like to please join me in a moment of silence for the victims of police homicide over the last week and a half. Dante Wright in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, Adam Toledo in Chicago, Illinois, and folks here closer to home, Chris Brandon Ruiz in Lompoc, California. If you would all please join me in a moment of silence.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Alonso, for leading us in a moment of silence. I will now open up for public comment. If there's anyone wishing to speak to the commission on items that aren't on the agenda, please indicate by raising your hand. I see we have one hand raised by E. Howard Green. If you can, I'm going to unmute you, and if you have a comment, please.
Hello, thank you.
Mr. Green, you're unmuted. Go ahead, speak to the commission.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me in so many ways? If you can hear me.
We can hear you, sir, just a little low.
I'll try to enunciate. I've been watching this, of course, through the webinar service, and I understand in a few days we will be able to see this.
Sir, if you just want to speak up just a little bit or a little closer to the microphone, we can't hear you.
Am I better now?
Much better.
Thank you. I want to express the thought that in today's agenda, I want to include a discussion of having your meetings also on Channel 18 live. You can get directly, like I am now, on the webinar system. And I understand from Mr. Ramirez that it'll be available in a few days also on the city's website. But it's something that you should consider if it's one of interest out in the public. And so thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Green. And for those of the commission that didn't hear, he asked that our commission meetings be broadcast on Channel 18 so that the general public can also view, because right now they can only participate via the live stream or wait for the video of our meetings to take place a day or so later. So thank you for that, Mr. Green. I see that Chelsea Lancaster has indicated she would like to speak. One second. All right, Chelsea, I've unmuted you. Please give me 1 second. Go ahead.
Good evening, commission members. I'm calling as a community member, a mother, an organizer, and somebody who cares deeply about safety. And when I say safety, I mean real safety, which is not policing. Safety for Black and Brown people, for folks with disabilities, for trans folks. I want to acknowledge Christian, and thank you for the moment of silence. I also want to name that Makia Bryant was also killed right as the verdict came down in the trial of Derek Chauvin. So I just really want to lovingly remind us why we're here and how important this work is. The lives depend on it. I want to appreciate especially the folks of color on this commission that are serving, because your experiential wisdom is valuable. And I also want to name that on behalf of our organizations, including Healing Justice, we would like to uplift Gabe Escobedo for chair. And we think that his leadership and his voice would be really a great fit for that role. I also want to request that when people are not speaking, that they consider muting themselves, because that was very distracting for people that are watching the meetings. Thank you again for your service, and please know that the community is here to support you, to uplift you, and please reach out if you need anything. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other comments from the public, so we will move on to the next part of our agenda, which is the selection and appointment of the chair and vice chair. If you are interested in being the vice chair, I'd like for you to raise your hand and speak to that. Want to know who may be interested in serving as vice chair and who may be interested in serving as chair. Do you have a question, Commissioner Killebrew?
Yeah, I think in the comments, it looks like Ana Zepeda had something that she wanted to talk about before getting into the agenda. Sorry to interrupt, but.
No, it's all right. Where are you, Commissioner Zepeda? Go ahead. I didn't see that in the chat.
Thank you, and thank you, Jordan. I just had something I needed to share before we continue forward. So I had to write it down. just so it was easier for me to share. And it's also in regards to yesterday's verdict. So I wrote it down. I put, although a minuscule piece of accountability was served yesterday with Derek Chauvin's conviction, we are reminded how important this committee is. What occurred in that courtroom was not justice. Justice would have been a father being alive. Justice would have been a 16-year-old Makia Bryant being alive and supported. Justice would have been a trans man, Chris Ruiz from Lompoc being alive, Megan Hockaday, Brian Carreños. We call the ones that were supposed to protect us. Instead, they are serving the internalized racism perpetuated by the bureaucracies maintaining these structures. As we move forward, let's remember this committee is because of the hard work of Black women leaders, and continue to say the names of all murdered, not only by law enforcement, but by the system that has failed us. So as we pick the chair and the vice chair today, let's keep that in mind, and let's keep in mind that we have a huge responsibility in forming this commission, and what we can do can systematically create change for in the future. So I want to make sure that this commission committee doesn't turn into another committee that's just about like, oh, we're all doing a great job, because we're clearly not. So let's focus on how we can really create change. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zepeda. So to return to the appointment and nomination of a chair or vice chair, Commissioner Rodriguez, go ahead.
Can I just request, would you mind just reviewing briefly what the responsibilities are for chair and vice chair? Just so that we know, as folks are volunteering themselves for the role, they know what it entails.
Sure.
It requires like understanding how the meetings operate. So
sure. So because absent a chair and vice chair, that's why I'm kind of leading the meeting, because we have no chair or vice chair. But once there is one appointed to that position, they will be the ones leading the meeting. They will be the ones going through the agenda. They will be the ones, calling on you, entertaining public comment. Of course, I'll still be here for staff support to walk through some of these items. One of the other items related to the developing of a procedure for future agendas is also does the chair may place items on the agenda. That's one thing that it depends on what the commission, how strong they want the chair to be. Do they want them to be the only one that can place items on the agenda? They're in absence of the chair, the vice chair would lead the meetings and be able to fulfill that role. They hold the gavel, so to speak, and no more of a time commitment other than what you guys are doing, and then working with staff to create an agenda. Hopefully that answers.
And if I add, good evening, Commissioners, Assistant City Attorney John Doimus. On that, as Sam elaborated, how you decide you want to put items on the agenda, you could leave that up to the chair or vice chair. And in terms of running the meeting, especially, just to summarize that point, making sure after each item public comment is there. We do have a good reference guide, and we will send a link to all the commissioners on our city webpage. It's a reference library in terms of how motions are made. We usually use Rosenberg's rules for running meetings. It's simpler. The League of Cities did a 7-page paper on that. So I will provide that reference guide too, and we're always available to work with whoever's the chair or vice chair if they have any questions on dealing with any acts in terms of getting motions forward, etc. So I just wanted to just add that point. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. So we'll start with again, who may be interested in serving as chair or vice chair. If you have if you'd like to hear from somebody that is later on who is considered why they'd like to be chair or vice chair, this is our opportunity to kind of go through that. Initially, is there anybody that would like to serve in either of those two roles?
Well, I promise it'll be my last interruption.
That works.
To help with this, someone can either advocate for themselves on either role or someone else on the commission why they would do so. Probably to allow public comment, we can then after each person or whoever chooses in the commission advocating for themselves or someone else, we could open up the public comment to hear the public and then bring it back to the commission to have a nomination. Then we would require a second. And then there would be a further discussion and a vote on that. So maybe that'd be the best way to go about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rodriguez, you have your hand up.
So I serve as the vice chair of the Fire and Police Commission. I've been on the commission for 2 years and I still don't feel comfortable leading a meeting. I've yet to lead a meeting. So for that reason, I would really hope and recommend that this isn't a figurehead position. This is someone who's legit, going down the agenda items and knowing when we might be in violation of Brown Act and so forth. So I would really like for someone to have familiarity running a commission meeting. So for that reason, I would like to nominate Mary O'Gorman, and maybe she can explain her background or her experience in city meetings.
We cannot hear you, Commissioner Gorman. Go ahead.
For some reason, I was muted. I guess that would be the first thing. I'm more used to Zoom than GoToMeeting, so I need a tutorial on that. But yeah, in terms of Brown Act meetings and public meetings, I've managed and also been on commissions, chair, vice chair over the years. Human Relations Commission, Fire and Police Commission, I was chair a number of times. And then just serving as staff to commissions where, I was responsible for, helping to, ensure there was an agenda and compliance with the Brown Act and all of that. So, I'd be happy and willing, to serve, and that's, kind of where I'm, where my background is or what it is. So, or as vice chair, I'd be happy to. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments, questions? Commissioner Rachel Johnson.
Thank you. Sorry, y'all are on this screen, but I'm looking at the camera over here. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not putting myself up for this, but I definitely want to say a few things. I want to echo the folks who have brought up the events of yesterday, that I think it's impossible to sort of meet together without acknowledging that, and also acknowledging that what happened yesterday was not justice, but accountability, and words matter. And I think that really got me thinking about the work that we do, because we're here because the community is asking for accountability. I think it's really interesting to kind of just think about that language and what we're doing. I'm definitely really interested in the leadership of this commission, not being the leader, but supporting the leader that we do choose, the two leaders that we choose. I think leadership is also something that I hope we all feel like we're already doing by being here. And I think we should create a sense of shared ownership of what this process looks like and what we're doing. I also feel really, really strongly that our chair should be a person of color. I think representation matters, and in this town especially, white folks have been making decisions in all of these spaces, or a lot of these spaces, almost exclusively. So I think I would encourage people to think of that as well as we're, kind of going through this process. And I also want to acknowledge that this is a really hard process to do in a virtual space. Like, I can see y'all on camera, but we can't get to know each other. We can't read each other's body language. So this is difficult. And just to say that out loud, that we are, here trying to select people that are going to guide us through this process. And that's just hard. So I think I guess what I'd suggest is that if anyone else is thinking about putting themselves forward or nominating, or when we hear from people, I would just love to sort of hear your comments on, yes, running an agenda is important, but I think also people who have those skills can support the leader in that work, as can the staff. I've chaired many committees, and running through an efficient agenda is a skill, but it's also, you know, can be a group effort if people respect the process. So yeah, I'd love to hear potential leaders talk about kind of how they think about creating a culture for this commission. You know, thoughts about community agreements or how we're going to treat each other, and kind of help co-design the process, because it seems like it is wide open at this point. I'd love to hear people talk about, yeah, kind of maybe how they feel about our decision-making process. Are we here to create consensus, or are we here to majority vote on things? I think, you know, that kind of guidance I know we'll get from staff, but I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that. And also just how, you know, how you'll ensure that this space is one where everybody's voices are heard, including voices that aren't in this room, right? I mean, we are on one of the most, well, probably the most diverse commission that's ever been put together. And that's amazing, but there's lots of voices that we are also here to represent. So beyond those skills of being comfortable leading an agenda, I would love to hear, yeah, some more kind of context and content from people who are considering these roles.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Anybody else would like to? Commissioner Alonso, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ramirez and commissioners. I thought we were going to do this at the last meeting. I thought that it was on the agenda for the last meeting. So at that time, I was planning to nominate Commissioner Escobedo for chair. I had watched the initial interviews for this commission pretty carefully to prepare for my own interview and to learn more about the issues we'd be discussing and the goals of the commission. So I think a lot of us, myself included, are newer to this process, and the chair position has additional responsibilities, and you really need to know parliamentary procedures to a certain extent so that we can have efficient meetings and make sure that we're being efficient with the public's time. So as I was thinking about this, Commissioner Escobedo occurred to me to be a good fit because he has experience with parliamentarian procedure on a similar city commission through the Planning Commission, but also he hasn't been doing that for so long that he's an expert. And I know some of the other good candidates here that have done work like this in the past may have a ton of experience, which I feel would be good, but might not also lend itself to an inclusive board. And what I mean by that is that, you know, someone who's got like a ton of experience running boards might come off as being a little more domineering and guiding our discussions. And I think it'd be great to have a little experience to keep us organized, but also to nurture a culture on the commission of learning and figuring this out together so that we can get some development for some of us, like me, who don't have a lot of experience, and stay focused on the mission of, you know, getting this to council and getting this, what our ultimate recommendations are, approved by the council. So with that, I'm nominating Commissioner Escobedo if he'll accept the nomination.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Alonso. Any other Commissioner?
I'll second that nomination.
I just wanted to add, I appreciate all your thoughts. I just wanted to add something I thought was important in the chair and the vice chair. I think it was highlighted by Commissioner Johnson earlier, is just to have a focus on listening to other voices. I know this is a very charged issue, and there will be people in the public or within our committee who might have opinions or thoughts that might not be what you perceive to be the right way. But I think I would like a chair and a vice chair that always advocate for every voice to be heard up until the end to make a decision. So
great, thank you for that. Any other comments? Commissioner Escobedo.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say thank you to Christian for nominating me, and to answer Commissioner Johnson's questions, because I think they're important ones. For me, the way I feel blessed in my time on Planning Commission because the chair that I've had the philosophy of keeping inclusive voices and making sure that everyone was heard. And so being vice chair of Planning Commission, I've actually been able to work closer with her. And I've come to recognize the importance of exactly that. And being on this 13-person, 15 if you count the alternate commission, it's even more that voices don't dominate conversation, and that we're making sure that we're providing spaces for those that this is a new experience, this is a new space, and for all of us, we have our reasons for being here, and it's very important that we get to imprint our life experience and our perspective onto this conversation. And so in the end, I'm hoping that we can come to a consensus on what the outcome is. And I think there's some creative ways that we can do that with breakout groups, work groups that focus on particular subject matter and they come back and report to the commission. I think that's one really good way. And I think that if we create the space and we're diligent about it, I think that we'll end up there. And so that's my perspective that I'm bringing into this. I would be more than happy to be the chair of this commission, but I will support anybody who the commission decides. And I would be more than happy. And it's an honor to be on this commission with you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Escobedo. Any other? Okay, so I believe then there were, and John Domas, correct me in terms of procedure. So we had a nomination of Commissioner Escobedo, we had a nomination of Commissioner O'Gorman, and Commissioner Rachel Johnson. Did you nominate yourself, or did you just want to hear from the commission?
Well, Sam, why don't we do this? Why don't we go to see if there's public comment, then we can close that, and then there needs to be a second. So someone, I think you can read the nominations, then again that you just listed, see if there's a second, and there can be a discussion, debate, and potential vote on that. If the votes are there, you have your chair. But we should each position first. Maybe we should start with chair, then vice chair, whatever the commission would like to do.
So let me go to the public and see if there's any. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak on the nomination of the chair and vice chair? If so, raise your hand in the chat feature and I will call on you. So give me 1 second. I see that Simone has raised her hand. I will click to unmute you. Go ahead, Simone.
Hi there, members of the Formation Commission. I just want to share gratefulness for each of you for your time, especially to Anna. I appreciated your comments. I also just wanted to uplift the nomination of Gabriel for the chair, where I believe that they are community-minded and represent each of us. We also trust that they would make sure that each of the different members on the council are heard, are able to ask genuine questions and dig deeper. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. I see no other hands raised for public comment, so we will close the public comment portion. And so I believe that the only two nominations were for one for Commissioner Escobedo and one for Commissioner O'Gorman. Go ahead.
And this is just for, sorry.
Give me 1 second, Commissioner Escobedo. Commissioner Rachel Johnson.
I was just curious. I wanted to ask, we had nominations, but did we have seconds? Do we need to actually start?
Not yet.
Okay.
And then Commissioner Zepeda, did you have a question or point of?
Yeah, so right now we're just doing chair and then we'll go into vice chair, correct?
Yes, I'd like to start with the chair. So, so by Commissioner Alonso, there was a motion to appoint Gabriel Escobedo as the chair of the Community Formation Commission. Is there a second? You can raise your hand. Commissioner Johnson seconded. Give me 1 second. All those in favor, I'm going to do a roll call vote just to Commissioner Adam L. Lakon.
Yes.
Commissioner Alonso made the motion. Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Kim Johnson.
I had a quick clarifying question. Do we only vote for one person? Is that how this works?
Yeah, so at this time, we're only voting on the chair.
Okay.
So for Commissioner Kim Johnson. Where did you
go? So which, am I answering whether or not?
You support the nomination of Gabriel Escobedo as chair.
Okay, and would I be able to support another person's nomination if I wanted to? Or am I only able to support one person's nomination for one position, for the same position?
So depending on how the vote goes, if there's a majority, then that nomination stands. But if there is not, then we're open for more nominations.
Okay. Gotcha. Yes.
Commissioner Escobedo, did you have a?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ramirez. I know for Planning Commission, and it might be, I know for Planning Commission, the way that we have done it, maybe Mr. Doimus can jump in, but we would have nominees, and then the commission would choose from the nominees so that it wouldn't just be one person dominating the votes, so that they wouldn't have to say yes or no to one particular candidate. They can choose the candidate that they prefer. And then from there, whoever gets the most votes, that would be the chair.
You can do it that way as well, Commissioner Escobedo. That's absolutely fine. We can have one individual person with a second and then a vote on that if they have it, or you can pick nominees and whoever gets the. So we can create a pool with a bunch of seconds and approvals, and then whoever gets the most votes from there. Correct.
Commissioner Rachel Johnson, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, because I mean, I guess we had already had another motion for a second person. So it should the vote. So the vote is we're voting for either Commissioner Escobedo or Commissioner O'Gorman. Have we gotten the seconds to both of those to be on the list for chair?
John Doimus, you want to weigh in on that?
Sure, Commissioner Johnson. So right now we have one commissioner. From I understand that Mr. Ramirez was taking a roll call vote. So we had one commissioner and that was nominated in a second. Do we have any other ones, Sam? Or
yeah, there's been a nomination for Mary O'Gorman. Is there a second? So in this case, Lewis, you're an alternate, so you'll be a silent spectator on this issue.
And Mary, you can second yourself.
Yes, you can. Absolutely.
I do have a question in terms of alternates. I do believe that we are down one commissioner tonight, and does that mean I'm able to vote today? I guess I'm confused as to how the alternate situation works for Mr. Reynaud and myself.
Sure, Commissioner Wood. If there's less than 13, then you would to replace that group. So right now, if we have a full 13, you being the 14th, then the alternate wouldn't vote on the matter. It's only when we go below the threshold of 13.
So there are fewer than 13 tonight, isn't that correct? Isn't Miss Alondra Harris not here? So then I would be voting, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
All right, so is there a second for the nomination of Mary O'Gorman as chair? You are muted, Commissioner Gorman.
For some reason I keep getting muted. What I was going to say is, why don't I just withdraw, because this is a little bit awkward of a nomination process. So, and I think we're already halfway through the commission. So let's just do that since I didn't have a second.
Okay.
Yeah, and there aren't any other nominations. You know, I'm happy to be vice chair or not at all. And one thing I did want to add, and I think especially after Rachel spoke, was I certainly didn't mean to imply that my only skills are that I know the Brown Act, because actually the issues and commissions that I've been on specifically have had to do with issues of hate crimes, human relations, you know, racial profiling, and you know, a lot of things. So kind of, you know, I wanted to make sure I threw that in there as well.
Great, thank you for that. Commissioner Zepeda, I saw your hand go up. Did you have a question or?
Yeah, I just I wanted to see to elevate some of our commissioners who, if they can, like, if they want to say anything or want to add anything, like any of us who haven't spoken yet, just gives them the opportunity to be able to share.
Great. And at any time, if anybody wants to add additional comments, just raise your hand. I'll see if I can spot you. So Commissioner Sander, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm feeling like this whole process has been a little awkward, so I kind of wish that we could press like a reset button and figure out what exactly we're doing here. So ideally, I know that Commissioner Escobedo has a first and a second, so, and that's for chair. Did we have discussion on vice chair yet? And if not, I'm curious, as there's a lot of people that haven't spoken, as Commissioner Zepeda just pointed out, and I'd love to hear, I know that we may have some introverts on here and this isn't the time to nominate yourself or talk, but I personally would really like to hear from you if this is like a leadership thing that you would want to contribute to, because I know personally I'm not, I echo Commissioner Johnson in that I don't necessarily want to lead this, but I would be happy to support anyone that would want to step up in this process. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
If I may help, thank you, Commissioner Sanders. So right now, from what I understand, we have one nomination. We need a second to have a nomination to vote on. And so we have 2 processes we can do. It's fine to sit there and have one nomination and go through the roll call to see if they're the majority of the votes, being 7 to place the commission, this person as a chair, or we can have several nominations and have a vote on that. So whatever the commission wants to choose on that, they can do that. They can choose right now to nominate a second if they want to do that. Chair, we allow that too. We want to give you guys the flexibility, the commission here, the flexibility to do as they wish. It'd probably be easier to do one position at a time, chair and then vice chair. So we do have one. We can add another nomination if you would like to do so. Again, it's up to the commission how they want to go about this.
Commissioner Sander.
So if that's the case, I'd just like to open it up. Was there anyone else outside of Commissioner O'Gorman or Commissioner Escobedo that was thinking about possibly chairing this? Can we close that first before we vote?
Yeah, so it looks like there were no other nominee. Oh, I can't see. Jordan, did you have Commissioner Gilbert? Go ahead.
Absolutely, and I do want folks to speak up and share if they are interested. But I also am confused because I think we're in the middle of a vote, and so that's where I'm just kind of thrown off about what's happening, because we were in the middle of a vote, and I think it left off with Commissioner Johnson, Kim Johnson, and so with that, I wonder if we complete that vote and then we move on to vice chair, because it sounds like folks aren't really interested in the chair position. That's what it seems like. I'm seeing nodding heads. Okay.
Sure, Commissioner Kildery, yes, we were in the middle of the vote. There was a question that when the vote came, could they vote for someone else? And the way it was being done, it was a vote for Commissioner Johnson. It was a yes or no. So it wasn't when the turn comes, can I pick someone else to nominate? So you're absolutely correct in terms of how you analyze that and address that. So we can go back to just to have make sure we have a clean, clear record. We can go back to Commissioner Johnson being nominated. There's a second. We can go back with the votes on that. I think there was a question from the commission if they wanted to have a discussion, open more people. We understand this is the first meeting. It's brand new. There's excitement to it. There's bound to be some confusion on it. So this is all to be expected and anticipated. But I think you did a great job handling, kind of corralling us on that issue. So why don't we start from the beginning? At least we have a nomination, Sam, and go forward from that. Thank you again.
So there was a nomination for Gabriel Escobedo to be chair by Commissioner Alonso. It was seconded by Commissioner Rachel Johnson. So now that is the motion on the floor that's been seconded. I'll start with the roll call vote. Commissioner Adam Olikan.
Yes.
Commissioner Alonso.
Aye.
Commissioner Chavez.
Yes.
Commissioner Escobedo.
Yes.
Commissioner Kim Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rachel Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Killebrew.
Yes.
Commissioner Buxton, Lesnar Buxton.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Gorman.
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Yes.
Commissioner Sander.
Yes.
And Commissioner Zepeda.
Yes.
And Commissioner Louisa Wood.
Yes.
Okay, so that is unanimous. Congratulations, Chair Escobedo. For the purposes of this part of the meeting, do you mind if I continue with the vice chair? Thank you. Before we hand over the reins, right? So I'm open for nominations for vice chair. Vice chair duties are similar to the chair in the absence of the chair. Go ahead, Commissioner Adam Lincoln.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner O'Gorman for vice chair.
Thank you.
There's been a motion to nominate Commissioner O'Gorman for vice chair. Commissioner Rodriguez.
I'd second that motion.
There's been a motion and a second for procedure. John, I will open for any other nominations. Is that correct, John Doimus?
Sorry, Sam, I was trying to find my mic button. Right now we have a motion on the floor, so we would vote on that.
Okay. Commissioner Rachel Johnson, you had a question or point?
And I think
Yeah,
Anna.
sorry, I just wanted to revisit what Commissioner Sanders suggested in terms of making space for people to speak up or be interested. And then also, since we're kind of starting afresh with the vice chair, would we entertain multiple nominations first and then move into a vote? Because I suspect there might be more, maybe more people interested in the vice chair.
Commissioner Johnson, you could entertain, if that's the route you want to go, you can entertain multiple nominations on that too. So we can go that route. I think the easiest way would be for the commission to understand if they want to choose to go that route, nominate several people and then have a up and down vote on each person is fine.
Okay. Is there anyone else that might be interested in the vice chair? Or would Commissioner Zepeda?
Yeah, I would be interested in running for vice chair.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on their own behalf or that of another commissioner for vice chair? Go ahead, Commissioner Rachel Johnson.
If that was Commissioner Zepeda nominating herself, I second that nomination.
Commissioner just for clarification, was that a motion to be considered for vice chair by yourself? All right. All right, so any other commissioners that would like to speak on this? So there are two motions on the floor. The first is for Commissioner Mary O'Gorman to be appointed vice chair. It's been seconded by Commissioner Rodriguez. Another motion on the floor for Commissioner Zepeda to be vice chair. It's been seconded by Commissioner Rachel Johnson. So we will take the first motion first.
I'm sorry, before we vote, could we hear from Commissioner Zepeda about her background and interests?
Sure. Great question. Go ahead, Commissioner Zepeda.
Thank you. Yes, so as you all know, Ana Cepeda, she, her, hers, and I'm local to Santa Barbara County. I am currently a UCSB student, sociology, and I'm currently studying for pre-law. I have done extensive research on other formation commission committees. I carry around my binder where I have things that have worked in other commissions that I would like to allocate and create as a part of successes here in our current Santa Barbara County Formation Commission. I have a lot of ideas, and I would love to work with our chair to try to find ways on how we can find these resolutions and hold police accountable. I also have served in other boards, so I am very aware about how to handle board meetings, how to handle agendas, how to maintain order and try to elevate all voices, not just my own voice. So that's something that's very important for myself as well. So, and if you have any other questions, feel free to ask me. I would have no problem answering.
Yes, I have a question. Thanks for that, very appreciated. And could you go elaborate on the boards you've been on and your experience with them?
Yes, so I have served with Freedom for Youth board. I have served and also in Future Leaders of America, actually was the first high school student, still being in high school, serving as in a board as part of Future Leaders of America. I also served for El Centro. So those are also a grassroots organization here in town. So I have a good representation. I also go to several meetings. So I go to school district meetings. I worked in the reentry task force meetings for the Santa Barbara School District to try to find safety ways to for students to return back to school while elevating the issues between safety within Black and Brown youth of color in our county. So trying to provide ways to lower suspension rates and how to find alternative ways for them. I have also most recently gone to the annual budgeting meetings on how we can remove budgetings on things that aren't helping our community and things going back to community support. So thank you for that question.
Thank you.
I thought I saw one other hand. No, okay. So go ahead, Commissioner Alonso.
Yeah, Mr. Ramirez, thank you. And thank you, commissioners. I just, would it be regular order for us to just vote to consider endorsement of vice chair and then vote in one motion to like O'Gorman, Zepeda, or abstain instead of doing it in two motions? That seems unnecessary.
I'll defer to John.
Correct, Commissioner Alonso. Yes, you would. In this case, you would, since we have two nominations. I don't know if we're going to have an additional. You would choose a name. If there is a majority, especially if there's two, I think we'd probably get a majority. Then that person would be the vice chair. Also, for future reference, not to complicate things, and down the road on issues too, there can be things such as before the actual formal vote could happen, a straw poll could be taken in certain situations. But if we have two nominations, instead of going up and down, each commissioner, Sam will state who the two nominations are, and each commissioner can state the name of their choice of the vice chair. That would be the most efficient way to do it.
Great. And John, for purposes of the vice chair, do I need to open public comment back up for vice chair?
We did it. We since it was one agenda item, we opened it for both.
Great.
So now we would pick
Thank
a
you.
vote. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any other nominations? Go ahead, Commissioner Kim Johnson.
I wanted to open it back up to Commissioner O'Gorman if there was a desire to add any additional information about your background. because I don't know that you were given the opportunity to tell us about, you know, your background and your reason for coming on. I think there was a specific question that you answered.
Oh, sure. I know at the first meeting I talked a little, but I was on the Fire and Police Commission for many years, and at that time, in the late 90s, when I was appointed and Salud Carbajal was appointed, it was like it was a headline that lesbian Latino appointed. I mean, that's how sort of unprecedented it was, and how much of a you know, breaking into what had been just an old boys network that was. I worked for many years doing hate crime prevention, networking, both here and then in Los Angeles County. I helped to start the City of Beverly Hills Human Relations Commission following a racial profiling lawsuit that they had down there many years ago. I worked as Chief of Staff for Supervisor Janet Wolf until her terms ended 2 years ago. And one of my primary roles for her was I was part of the criminal justice realignment work group, you know, trying to help shift funding from what was largely the sheriff and district attorney, you know, to other entities. So that's kind of the last 20 years anyways. So, and happy to answer any other questions. I've lived here most of the last 30 years. I graduated from UC Santa Barbara in Law and Society. I lived in Ventura County for a number of years. I was actually a probation officer down there back in the 1980s. I do a lot of dog rescuing, Labrador retrievers and others. So that's kind of who I am. And I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Great, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, comments, or nominations? If not, we will move on to the roll call vote. As City Attorney John Diamonds mentioned, there's two nominations, one for Commissioner Zepeda, one for Commissioner O'Gorman. I have a tally sheet, so all you need to do when called on is let me know which of the two you would like to or abstain if needed. So Commissioner Adam Malekun.
I'm going to abstain.
Commissioner Alonso.
Zepeda.
Commissioner Chavez.
I would like to nominate Commissioner Zepeda as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Escobedo.
Zepeda.
Commissioner Kim Johnson.
Commissioner O'Gorman.
Commissioner Rachel Johnson.
Zepeda.
Commissioner Killebrew.
Zepeda.
Commissioner Lesnar Buxton.
Zepeda.
Commissioner O'Gorman.
O'Gorman.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
O'Gorman.
Commissioner Sander.
Zepeda.
Commissioner Zepeda.
Cepeda.
And Commissioner Louisa Witt.
Zepeda, please.
By the vote, Zepeda is majority. So congratulations, Commissioner Vice Chair Zepeda. Golf clap for you. Chair Escobedo, I can continue to move us through the agenda. I'd be happy to hand it over to you if you have the agenda in front of you. And if there's an item before you, feel free to defer to staff, and I'll continue to present.
Thank you, and thank you to the commission, and congratulations, Vice Chair Zepeda. Mr. Ramirez, it looks like we're moving on to selection of future meeting dates. Did you and Mr. Doimus have a particular process in mind?
Yeah, so At our last meeting, even before our last meeting, staff chose the third Wednesday of the month. We had some discussion toward the end of our last meeting on what day of the month worked best for the commission. I do a kind of a straw poll and the chat feature of days that worked. Overwhelming majority, the third or a Wednesday worked. Wasn't specified necessarily that it was the third Wednesday, so we continued with that. That created a conflict for one of the commissioners, so went back out to you through the SurveyMonkey link to just ask again if we have the third Wednesday of the month, which creates a conflict for one of your colleagues. Would the second Wednesday of the month work for the group? I know that anytime you move one day, it may potentially create a conflict for another. I know we all live different professional, personal lives. So just kind of, this is one of those things that any commission deals with, right? Just how do we address, either, conflict with our calendars or conflict on items. Go ahead, Commissioner O'Gorman.
I figured just because I'm the one who I have one other board that I was actually elected to, and so it's hard for me to not be there. But other than that, every other day of the month and evening, I'm available. And I know, many of us, some of you are on commissions, various commissions. Probably there's one thing that you just, is hard to move. So I just wanted to put it out there to see if second Wednesday, fourth Wednesday, or again, literally any other time other than the evening of the third Wednesday, would work. So
go ahead, Commissioner Lizzie Rodriguez.
The first, second, or fourth Wednesday works for me.
The first, second, or fourth Wednesday works.
So, Mr. Ramirez, what are your thoughts about giving each commissioner the opportunity to comment on the first, second, or fourth Wednesday, and see if we can find a consensus among the commission?
Sure. So I'll do so Commissioner Adam Olikan.
Any Wednesday works for me.
Okay, great. Commissioner Alonso.
I have no preference. Please, let's figure out a Wednesday of the month where all of the commissioners can participate to the best of our ability. I would love to make sure that we have expertise like Commissioner O'Gorman's available and not divided across other important things.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Chavez.
I also am available any days of the week in the evenings.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Escobedo.
Any Wednesday evening works for me.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Kim Johnson.
I'm open any Wednesday evening.
Great. Commissioner Rachel Johnson.
First or
you cut out, Commissioner Johnson. Can you repeat that?
First or second Wednesdays both work for me.
Great. Commissioner Killebrew.
I would say the same, as Commissioner Johnson.
Great. Commissioner Lesnar Buxton.
First and second work for me.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Gorman said already which ones work. Commissioner Rodriguez, you said
any of those dates work for me.
Great. Commissioner Sander.
Well, the first, second, or fourth Wednesday work well for me.
Great. And Commissioner Zepeda.
Any of those times work for me.
All right. Commissioner Reynaud.
I can vote?
Yeah, just I want to hear your availability for it.
Whatever you guys decide works for me.
Great. Commissioner Louisa Wood.
Same goes for me. Any of those is fine.
Great. So it sounded like the second Wednesday of the month is going to work for all of the commissions. So thank you for your patience, Commissioner O'Gorman.
Well, thank you.
Already working together. That's what I like to see.
First unanimous vote.
Consensus, right on.
Okay, go ahead, Chair Escobedo.
Okay, so it looks like the second Wednesday is moving forward, and now we need to discuss a procedure on how we're going to place items on future agendas. And it sounded like Mr. Ramirez had brought up some ideas, whether it was the chair and the vice chair. I think it might be nice if there were ways for other commissioners to also place items on the agenda. I'm not sure what that mechanism looks like and how far out that Mr. Ramirez needs to know it, but maybe Mr. Doimus, you can give us some insight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Escobedo. The commission has several options to choose from. We understand this is really specifically a commission-driven agenda, meaning all of you wanting items, especially because you're working towards one goal at the end, kind of a large workshop in terms of getting all the information, doing the work in these meetings, having deliberations towards one goal. It really revolves around this commission choosing carefully what's placed on this agenda moving forward. So there are several options that the commission can choose from. We have a discussion, open to public comment, and then vote on it. One being you can entrust the chair to place items, or the vice chair, or each individual commissioner can put an item on the agenda, at least I would say a week in advance, so we can meet the noticing requirements of the Brown Act. What works too sometimes, we have on some commissions, we have a regular placeholder on meetings. We call it future agenda items or future business, and it allows the commissioners to have a discussion of what they want to put on the agenda, explain the reason, what it is, give some detail, why it's within the jurisdiction of the commission, what it would entail, but don't have a substantive discussion. Don't go into it. Don't make it, because that would be a Brown Act violation. And then the commission could vote a majority if they want to place that item for the next month's agenda. So those are some of the simplest, easiest ways to do it. And trust the chair, the vice chair, a commissioner can do it by counting staff, allowing that ability, or having just a item on future items. Then have leave it for a vote for the commission. The council also has it where you do a memo with two council members, sending it to put an item on that. That could be a little more complicated. So I'm trying to make it as easy, accessible as possible for the commission on that.
Commissioner O'Gorman?
Yeah, just because I was thinking about this week after seeing the agenda, and I guess one of the things that kind of sets us apart, at least from commissions that I've been on, is we're very, we've got 1 year and we've got kind of one mission. I mean, it's, obviously, we can define that. So in that sense, it's a little different. And one thing that might help is when we do the timetable on here, for how we're going to present, our recommendation and all that. I mean, that might kind of take up a lot of our time. But one thing I was thinking is, and like on a lot of commissions, you have an executive committee, which is the chair, the vice chair, and then a staff member to the commission. I would suggest that. And then if as commissioners, there's something particular that's, pertinent to our charge that we would like to request, and like if I had a thought, I'd send an email to you guys, but then you make the decision, or talk to me. So, I mean, I'd be comfortable with that. That's just a thought.
Thank you. Commissioner Rodriguez?
I would, echoing what Commissioner O'Gorman stated, I would also really want to avoid doing the new business process, because it's a whole month delay. So if we talk about something here, and this is a work group, this is, I think, what makes this commission different is we are all rolling up our sleeves and we're doing work, as opposed to having reports given to us. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, we want to be efficient with our time. So the new business process would be, I have an idea and I think we should talk about it, but we can't talk about it unless it's on the agenda. So I have to wait for this meeting to request that it's on the agenda, and then we vote, and then we don't get to talk about it for a month later. So it ends up being a 2-month delay. So I would like to avoid that part and do something different, whatever that different might look like.
That's a really good point. Are there any other commissioners that have any feedback on the ideas that have been presented to this point? Commissioner Kim Johnson?
Yeah, I just want to echo support for what Commissioner Rodriguez just mentioned. I didn't realize that, and that would really put a huge strain on our ability to move quickly and effectively. So to the extent that we can find a solution, that would be great.
So if I could recap just to make sure that I understood Commissioner O'Gorman correctly. So it would be the vice chair, myself, and staff. Obviously, the next item is we're talking about the timetable, but we would be agendizing according to the timetable. And if commissioners had feedback on agenda items that they'd like to see, they would reach out to us, and we would then incorporate that into an agenda.
Yes, yeah, that's essentially. I think a lot of it will kind of work itself out once we have a timetable and topics, because my sense is whatever request would be, like somebody thinks, well, I'd like to hear from this person in the community to, that we can work that into our outline or timetable somehow. Or, you and the vice chair. Or give feedback if that's not feasible, at the time.
That's a great idea. Is there any feedback on that proposal? Positive or otherwise?
I think all of this is great. It would be really, I think, advantageous for whatever we decide on for it to be like written and clearly communicated to all the commissioners so that we all understand how to address the chair, vice chair, and city staff that are working on this initiative to get things onto the agenda. Without a chair, I was kind of like, who do I reach out to? So I reached out to Sam Ramirez about, Mr. Ramirez about doing a moment of silence. Apparently the Brown Act does not require that those be agendized. So it would also be really great for those of us who are a little bit newer to this to understand what needs to be agendized. I think that, obviously business, anything that needs like a decision to be discussed, and then to have clear rules, because our charge here is too important to screw it up with a Brown Act violation. So it would just be really good for all of us to understand what the guidelines are. I personally don't have any preferences for how we do this, as long as it is efficient and everyone understands very clearly. If you want to discuss something before this board, before this commission, that you have like written steps so that you understand how to do it.
Very good feedback. Mr. Doimus, is that something that we could set up fairly quickly in preparation for our next meeting?
Absolutely. If we choose a modem of how we want to do that in terms of, I will have that done with for the commission with your review, reviewing the vice chair's review to distribute. Absolutely not a problem at all. And that's a lot of times how city council works, in terms of they go over the agenda with the mayor and the mayor pro tem, and then establishing, creating it, and then each commissioner, if they want to reach out to the chair and vice chair, since we have a large commission, that's not a problem in terms of a Brown Act, because you're not worried about a quorum because it's only confined to 3. We're good with that. So if that's the direction that wants to be done, I can easily write that down for all the commissions so they know that. That's not a problem at all.
So if it would help, can I make a motion to do exactly what John just said? But ask the city attorney to draw that up as the process that we've discussed.
So I think the motion you want to make, Commissioner O'Gorman, is that the way that items will be placed on the agenda is that city staff will meet with the chair and the vice chair in establishing each agenda for each month, but also each commissioner can reach out to city staff and the chair and vice chair for placement of an item as well on there. And the chair and the vice chair, here's the part I want to make sure, the chair and the vice chair can consider it and automatically accept it, or can they reject it? Based on scheduling or just on it's an automatic placement.
Yeah, no, I think they can make that decision, but obviously my sense is they would communicate with the commissioner and
okay,
probably reach some consensus. And all of it within the context of whatever our timetable is.
Okay. Then just to recap, the chair and vice chair will meet with city staff to establish an agenda, and each commissioner has the ability to just email the chair, vice chair for consideration of an item to place on the agenda.
That sounds good.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Louisa Wood is the second. Mary O'Gorman is the motion maker. Do we have any discussion on the item? I'm seeing none. Mr. Ramirez, can we go to a voice roll call vote?
Yeah, just give me one second. Commissioner Killebrew had a.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So are we getting into the specifics of the timing of that? Like, is this a week out, or like of the meeting that this is decided? I just want to make sure that we are very, very clear within the details of what is the timing of getting this agenda finalized, and then allowing us commissioners to be able to sit with that information and be prepared for the topics at hand. Because I think that's a really important thing, because we've said that this is a working commission, and so we need to be able to be, prepared in advance to have a fruitful and thoughtful discussion and move forward. So I just wanted to outline what are the, is it a week out that we get the final agenda, and then does that then predicate when is the deadline to get things in? So I just want to clarify that.
Sure. If I may add, Chair Escobedo and Commissioner Adam Malikan, it would be probably
Commissioner Killebrew.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Killebrew. Thank you. It would be probably for staff. It would be fair at least maybe 10 days out from the meeting. I would say 5 or 7, but it depends on the weekend. So 10 days out, since the agenda needs 72 hours advance notice, would be at least fair for staff to get everything down in detail, to publish it, everything. So I would add that as part of that. And I guess before we go to a vote, I think there may be a hand raised. We would want to go out to a public comment too before all that. But that would be my suggestion. I think at least in dealing with a lot of this, 10 days, would be fair, would be very doable on the staff's part.
Commissioner Rachel Johnson.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, because this might be a separate motion than is the what Commissioner Rodriguez mentioned about sort of thinking about the new business aspect. Would that be something with this motion, or are we going to talk about that after this motion is voted on?
When you say new business, are you talking about how to agendize items, or?
So, okay, well, maybe I have a misunderstanding of it then. I thought part of that discussion was if something comes up in a meeting that folks want to discuss that night, assuming then that it had not been put on the agenda. And the example is Mr. Ramirez sent us all a letter from a community member just today that, would be something that we might discuss. And so I'm just curious what happens to that, things that happen between the 10-day out window and us actually meeting to have a productive conversation.
It's a very good question. Mr. Doimus, did you catch Commissioner Rachel Johnson's question?
I did catch Commissioner Johnson's question. In order to have a meaningful discussion on it, it needs to be agendized. So the minimum, of course, is 72 hours. That's why I say maybe a week. I was trying to get, but public comment can be there if it's. I think what was submitted was a public comment. It's a different issue in terms of having a discussion with the person and having a public comment. But if there's an issue that comes up where the commission wants to analyze something really carefully and discuss, it needs to be agendized. So it has to be on the agenda. And the reason for that, I think you're all aware of it, is because this commission is also, if it's for transparency, it's for the benefit of the public. So so members of the public can see something on that agenda and realize that's an issue that I really want to hear about. That issue is really important to me, and that specific maybe item I want to give input on. Maybe I have experience in my background in public comment. I can offer that to the commission when I speak. So that's why it needs to be done that way. It's for the benefit of the public. So in order to have a discussion on it, it has to be on that agenda. When I say discussion,
Rodriguez?
Yes, thank you so much. I was hoping that we could get to that part because it seemed like it might be cumbersome.
Commissioner Rodriguez, we're getting some feedback.
Is that better?
No.
Can you still feedback?
Still feedback.
Still feedback?
Yeah. Do you have maybe some headphones or?
She said to proceed to another comment.
Maybe now would be a good time to open up public comment, and then after public comment, we can come back to Commissioner Rodriguez.
Sure. Let me see if there's any members of the public that would like to speak on this item. If you'd like to speak on the item before us, which is the placement of items on future agenda, item number 6, please raise your hand in the chat feature. I think I see one. Not sure, Simone, if you have your hand raised for this item. Let me unmute you. Simone, if you want to speak on this item, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't trying to raise my hand, but
okay. No worries. Thank you. All right, there are no further, let's see if Mr. Green, did you have a comment on this item?
Thank you.
No, I don't think he did. Mr. Green.
The Bi-County. And one of the things that we do is the staff publishes a week before our meetings a draft agenda. And we have, that's not important.
Mr. Green, we're having a hard time hearing you. Seems to be a lot of cutout, but I heard something about a week before agenda and we lost you after that.
Better?
It's a little. Go ahead.
The commission I'm on, Bi-County Commission, they publish the agenda a week before we meet as a draft, and then the following, I guess it's probably 4 days before we meet, it's published as public record. The other thing I would raise for your consideration is a practice of the council has that it takes 2 members of the council members to put something on the agenda without having to have any approvals from anyone else. So if 2 of you agree, or 2 of you agree, that could be a basis also for agendizing something. So it's a good way to have minority input. And the other aspect that is interesting with the council meetings is that at the end of the meeting, they circulate around and kind of report on what they've been doing, a chat kind of dialogue. Nothing's approved, it's just sharing things. I'd like you to all perhaps consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green, for that. That's no further comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Back to Commissioner Rodriguez.
Let's try this. Can you hear me better?
Yeah,
Yay.
that's perfect.
Okay, I was going to take that as a sign as I shouldn't speak anymore. So I'm free. But I just wanted to say that I know that that process may feel cumbersome of putting items on the agenda in that request that we're going to be doing with, I think I'll have to look at the notes. It was either 10 days or a week before. And then anything between that goes on as new business. And as Attorney Doimus mentioned, the main reason for that is so that we are responsible to the public, so that we are being completely transparent in what we're going to be discussing, so that they don't feel like we're sneaking anything through. So the agenda gets posted to the public a week before, and I've been putting it on Nextdoor as well. And I invite you to share it on social media to invite folks to these meetings for public comment, so that they are clear of what we're going to be discussing. And then if something comes up, we use the proper steps to be able to put it on the agenda for next month. So I just wanted to sort of reassure that it's not meant to be an obstacle, as many government processes are. It's really meant so that we are responsible to the public.
Thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez. Any other commissioners with discussion on the motion? I'm seeing none. Mr. Rodriguez, or can we get a voice? Ramirez, sorry. My apologies.
No worries.
Mr. Ramirez, can we get a voice roll call vote?
Yeah, so if the chair is okay, I would just do a voice vote on this. There's a motion and it's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Unanimous. Okay, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. So the next item is going to be an important one, in which we discuss creating a timetable for presenting a recommendation to City Council. And I know in the last meeting we had discussed perhaps a staff proposal. I'm not sure if Mr. Ramirez or Mr. Doimus, you have an idea or proposal for the commission, or if we are starting from scratch.
Thank you, Chair Escobedo. This is actually a chance. There's nothing you have to vote on this item. This is a chance for everyone to kind of have a discussion of what the commissioners with them between each other, what their ideas are, right? To formulate something. We wouldn't dare want to impose and provide something. So nothing has to be decided on necessarily. It could be a discussion. It could be something that we can come back to, or it could be something that everyone maybe agrees to creating some type of timeline. But there's a flexibility for a really fruitful discussion from the commission tonight between the members of what they envision this timetable to look like, what they how they plan to go about it. So it's a pretty open discussion on kind of the objective that everyone here is trying to accomplish. I don't know if Mr. Ramirez wants to add anything else to that.
I do, just two points. So part of the timeline was dependent on how the commission decided to place things on the agenda, because as Commissioner Rodriguez mentioned, there are some things that allow for fast movement of items and some policies and procedures that create slower timelines. So now we have at least an idea of like, okay, this is how the commission is going to place items on the agenda. So it also goes partly in hand with John Doimus's presentation today. There might be something in his presentation that you're going to want more research on, more discussion on. And so, if we were to assume we have 1 year together, do we spend 3 years researching civilian oversight systems? Do we spend another 3 months, taking it to the public? Do we spend another 3 months, preparing a draft report for council? This might be the opportune time to bring in a facilitator for your next meeting to really, channel the discussion. That's been brought up at our last meeting. I think that might be a way to kind of, focus the conversation and our work. It really is just open for discussion. You're not, tied to one specific date. Really want to just, we touched on it last meeting, but really didn't have a chance to really dive deep into what you like in part of this process to look, what you would like it to look like.
Thank you for that. Commissioner O'Gorman? You're muted.
Sam, for some reason you're muting me, or that's what it says on here. So anyways, I guess a couple things, and for Sam and John, maybe, the council said a year, but where are we going from that year? Because this process has been going on for a while. So are we talking about, next January or, next March? I mean, is there, a firm timetable there? So that's one question I have. And then the other.
I can answer the first part. So it's a 1-year term from the date of your appointment, which is last March. So we know we have 1 year, so March 2022. But I also I think the council also recognizes, and I mentioned this at our last meeting, that there is the work is difficult, the work is challenging, and I don't think that there's an expectation that everything may be solved in 12 months. And if there's some extension of that, we'd be happy to take that to council, for discussion.
But for now, it's
12 months
March.
from March. Correct.
So it's just good to have that sort of those bookends, I think, because then we're talking about, I mean, next month is May, so 7, 8, 9 meetings, and needing some kind of outline.
And you had a second question, Commissioner O'Gorman?
No, I mean, the others are just, I'm just kind of brainstorming myself, but I don't need to say anything more at this point.
Commissioner Rachel Johnson? Thank you, Commissioner O'Gorman.
Thank you. Yeah, I just thought to Sam's defense briefly on the muting thing. I know I'm one person at least that has asked him to actually help mute us if we forget to mute ourselves when we're not talking, because background noise can sometimes be really distracting, but also sometimes actually, depending on your audio system, be really difficult. So thank you, Sam, for doing that for us. I wanted to definitely put support behind the idea of a facilitator. I think if we use that strategically, that sounds like a fantastic idea for how to at least get through some of the initial sort of planning bits in an efficient way and in a way that doesn't kind of overly burden our new chair and vice chair. So I think, I don't know if there needs to be a motion for that or how we go about contributing ideas of who we might look into getting to do that, but I love that idea. And also just at our last meeting, we had mentioned at least briefly the idea of subcommittees or sub-working groups, and I'd love to maybe revisit that and hear from staff about how that might work, because I think, yeah, work between our meetings will probably be very necessary.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. It's my understanding that we can have working groups as long as we don't break the Brown Act. So for this large group, we can have working groups of up to 6, I believe. So maybe if Commissioner Rachel Johnson, if you want to, were there particular topics that you would like working groups for?
I mean, I'd love to hear what other folks have ideas about that. I mean, I think about something like the information that's been forwarded by the city to us. So whether that's something like the letter today, where there might be like looking into something that needs to happen between meetings. So there could be a kind of quick action group. I feel like there's a lot of research, and that might not be a fun thing or a skill set that everybody has. So maybe, a group that's tasked with particular research questions that then they can share knowledge back to the group at each one. Those are just a couple thoughts, but yeah, I'm sure other people have ideas.
Thank you. I saw Commissioner Alonso's hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that I agree with the facilitator question. I'm curious, we had talked about at the last meeting that City Council would be open to budget. We didn't hear how much that would be, but I believe, in order we would do a like a motion to direct staff and our chair and vice chair to get us a proposal to review for the next meeting on like what the available facilitators for this kind of thing are. Most of the research that I've seen so far and the leadership on this particular issue of civilian oversight of law enforcement has come from NACOL, or the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, and they have a pretty large wing of like training and education and all kinds of stuff like related to this issue specifically. So I'm wondering if we would be able to get budget from City Council to get a facilitator from NACOL or from a similar group to do that. And I would love to see a proposal on the available options there. Additionally, I just have a question for either Mr. Doimus or Mr. Ramirez about and when we're talking timetable here. I think, and I'm really excited to hear what the other commissioners think about this work and what our primary function should be. But to me, when I think of this work and I think of what makes good civilian oversight of law enforcement, is that it focuses on the folks in our community locally who are most impacted by law enforcement. And so I think the bulk of this work, when I think about what we're doing here, should very much focus on getting input and participation and collaboration with folks in our community who are most impacted by policing. So we would need to see from our police department what those facts and figures are: arrests, police involved homicide. Like we would need to see those facts and figures so that we can get first an idea of who is most impacted in our community, and then reach out to those folks. So we have 10 months from the next meeting to March 2022. So just from the staff's perspective, Mr. Doimus or Mr. Ramirez, like how long would it take you, logistically to do that kind of outreach? Is 10 months enough to get a good idea, or to go and like give it a good effort to go and obtain that input from the community, from the impacted communities?
I could start, Sam, if you want me to, Commissioner Alonso. You raised some good points. I do want to start off by saying, we're here for resources, and you'll hear my report. Our goal as staff, obviously, is not to provide opinions, decisions, recommendations at all. But we're here as a resource. And for example, we mentioned NACOL. We have Lieutenant Hill here with me, who will help me in my presentation if you have questions on our current procedures. He has potential. He's very participates in that organization and can maybe possibly present a speaker from NACOL for this commission. But in terms of community outreach, I think the police department could provide statistics, but the outreach, I think, is most importantly done by the commission. Unfiltered from you reaching out, and that could be done through working groups et cetera. You could take anything we offer. If we can, provide a facilitator, we can provide someone from NACO, we can provide statistics for the commission to review, but public input should become, just a suggestion, come unfiltered from the public to you, this commission. I think would be the most appropriate way. Me as a city attorney, a lawyer, that view is my view here is to help provide information, any issues in the Brown Act. But I'm not, I'm not tasked with the public outreach. Not that I wouldn't mind it or but it isn't my role for that. It's viewed as a commission's role, which what they want to do. So we're here to provide as much tools, information that you need to help with this process. And I recognize the incredible responsibility, the workload, the pressure that entails too, to get all this done. It's an awesome responsibility. And with that recognition, we're here to provide as much as we can. So I hope that at least addresses your question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Doimus. If I could just clarify really quick, I think when I'm like talking about like the staff helping, like what I'm thinking of is like a scientific survey, so that we don't have just, anecdote like stuff which we need to do in outreach. But I like when we're making an argument and a set of recommendations to the city council to say, hey, you should do this, I would love to see a scientific survey, which would require budget, which would require probably expertise that we might not have on the commission and have to get resources for a survey. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of like, would the staff be able to help us like put together a survey to get that recorded, right? Like for example, like what kind of civilian review would impacted communities here and locally in the city of Santa Barbara like to see if we conduct a survey that way?
I understand. Thank you for clarifying that point, Commissioner Alonso. Yeah, what some cities have done in terms of recommending the type of civilian review, this is unique. They haven't engaged actually citizens making up a commission. Sometimes they've hired, companies to go do that, type of surveys and information and provide it to council. So if that's one of the ideas being presented to that, we can take that to the city administrators. That would kind of also be part of the facilitator, I think, role. We see some of these facilitators doing stuff like that, providing data, providing information. Several Southern California cities have done that, where they have done surveys in all communities, their experiences of the police, et cetera. So I understand what you're asking for, and what we hear from this discussion, we'll take to present that. A lot of that part will cost budget, and so we recognize the budget cost for that and the need for it. So,
and in addition to that, the mayor just messaged that the council agreed to support the cost of the facilitator, because I think that they recognize that there might need to be an outside person to kind of guide a conversation and to kind of facilitate everything that it is that we're trying to do. In terms of statistics, Commissioner Alonso, I can work with Lieutenant Hill to see what stats the department does already kind of track, and that might be a good starting point to see if it helps inform some of the decisions or discussions that you want to have. And if not, then how difficult would it be to gather that data that informs the decision or discussion that you want to have. So I'll work with Lieutenant Hill on that.
Commissioner Adama-Lakin.
I was just going to add to what Commissioner Johnson was saying earlier. I think our committees are the perfect vehicle to kind of focus on those issues that we've talked about, such as getting more information about like community outreach, and also just even working with the staff group, because it's kind of overwhelming imagining our whole commission like working with like the staff. It's a little much. So I think it'll be great once we see this presentation of the police review systems, which I'm looking forward to. I think it'll be great to kind of maybe later break up into groups, look at the pros and cons of each system, and kind of like work with outreaches or do whatever to kind of narrow them down as we go along. So.
Commissioner O'Gorman, then Commissioner Rachel Johnson.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Christian was saying and the whole idea of facilitation. Just because I know that the time frame, doing an RFP and all that stuff. I mean, I would say that even if we can get consensus tonight that taking the council or the mayor up on the offer to have facilitation and maybe combining maybe into one RFP, someone who can also do the community survey or provide those, even if it's just helping to facilitate our, accomplishing that. I'm thinking it could be the same person or firm. And then also, there are some groups that already meet through the county, the criminal justice work groups, one that Ethan Bertrand is liaison now to the board, and there's a lot of the impacted or vulnerable communities, from mentally ill and youth and all of that. So I think once we have a sense of what our timetable is and what we're looking for, we can kind of, and again, the idea that Damo had of having an outreach committee, maybe going and making some of that contact there, because there is a lot of engagement in the community now. So I would just support having a motion that once we get through this discussion, but that moving forward with facilitator is important.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Rachel Johnson.
Yeah, I definitely want to underscore all of that that's been said. I won't repeat it, but just to add to that, I love the idea of engaging with the facilitator on. I definitely want as much data as possible, but when it comes to the community outreach piece, I might suggest, that we have a subgroup about that, to maybe discuss with the facilitator what that could look like in terms of using people in our own community to do that. Like, I love the idea of outside facilitation for some data, but again, kind of going back to why we're here in the first place, which was a mobilized community effort from here in Santa Barbara. And so I just wouldn't want to miss out on thinking through, maybe we should be doing that work ourselves rather than an outside facilitator, or engaging with organizers in the community that could do that better because they know our community.
Very good point. Vice Chair Zepeda.
Thank you. And then in regards to the committees, I had a couple of suggestions about possibly having a committee that focuses, like, as we said, with budgeting and finances and researching that what has been done in the past, and a committee with research and review. So, again, the stuff that a lot of people don't like reading, but, reading everything that's been done before and how we can review that information and apply it. And of course, outreach, and also partnering with and collaborating with local groups who have already been elevating the voices of individuals who have lived experience, and then trying to figure out how we can continue to elevate that and how we can implement that here, like with grassroots organizers, and then making sure that folks are getting also paid as if they were a facilitator, if we're seeking them for their recommendations in regards to this committee as well. So that was my suggestion in regards to that. And trying to keep it as local as possible, just because it's good to have outside sources, and it's more important to have individuals who have been working here and doing the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rodriguez.
So thinking about timing and structure, I'm hearing everyone, I'm thinking like basically from March to June is our forming, and that includes putting out the RFP for a facilitator. And then maybe like July through September would be our research, where we can break out into groups and do that research and then bring it back to the committee every month to really help educate everyone else. And then the public outreach, I think we definitely need at least 3 solid months to do that, because we need to get information out, folks to feel comfortable being able to talk about this topic in a group, whether it's virtual or in public. So I'm thinking maybe like October through the December month, and then that leaves us like January through March to be able to, as a group, draft the report that we want to offer City Council. I also think it would be important to have some sort of quarterly reporting that we can give to the community and let them know where we are in this process.
That's a good idea.
That is a good idea. Commissioner Lesnar Buxton?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
My main concern is that I work on a lot of committees which come up with great ideas only to be shut down by whoever is on top of them, i.e. city council. So I would just like to ask who's on council liaison, and B, it is possible to have like monthly check-ins with council just so they know what we're up to. Thank you.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Commissioner Lesnar Buxton. From other commissioners that we haven't heard so much from, Commissioner Renaud?
Yeah, it's mute off.
Yep.
Spoke with the actual person who heads what we're trying to do in San Francisco, and talked to him at length over the last month or since we last met, and he sent me the goals and objective statements for collaborative reform initiative for SFPD. He also sent me all of the Department of Justice reform initiative, which he said you all should start there. They spent over $4 million doing what we're doing, and it took them 3 years to get to a recommendation. So he said, look, if you guys, just to start, should just read those things, which I've been reading the last month. I would love to email them all to you guys. It's not that much. It is some reading, but it's just a good place to start. And then the third thing that they use is Obama's 21st century policing. And even though when our former president got into office, he kind of got rid of all that stuff, San Francisco stayed on with it. And lastly, he consults for a lot of different groups who do what we're doing. He would come speak to our group for free anytime if we so desire, or someone else from the PD. I know it's not local, but it's just in terms of getting good information. I think the DOJ and the Collaborative Review Initiative are good places to start.
Thank you. And I'll reach out, and we'll be able to get those documents to the rest of the commission. Thank you for that.
I have kind of a housekeeping thing. Sam, or anyone aware of, with the new going into the orange tier, is there even, I even hesitate to bring it up, but any idea when we might be able to meet in person? As Rachel said earlier, I just think for any group, but especially something with as sensitive and information and, so important. So any idea about that?
I don't know specifically, but I know that we did move into the orange tier, which is, one step closer to, these, in person. Let me work with our city staff, and then I'm sure that there's a facility somewhere that might be available for us to kind of, socially distance if needed and really try to work this stuff out in person.
That'd be
I think it's a great idea, and that's our hope, that we can be in the same room to kind of, walk through some of these ideas. So let me find out, Commissioner O'Gorman, and I'll respond to the group.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Chavez, any feedback on timeline or things you would like to see on the agendas?
I think we've all had really great ideas so far, so thank you all for those. It's been really inspiring to hear them. I do want, even though we do have such a short amount of time, I think it would be really great that if we got even just one or two really solid recommendations for the city council that are very easy to implement for them. I think that would be really great. I know we are limited on time, but I would really like to see that. I also do like the idea of having working groups. I think that would be a lot more efficient than just meeting once a week, or once a month, sorry, as a whole group. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kim Johnson?
Hi, yeah. Building off of what Commissioner Chavez said, have we firmed up what the end deliverable looks like? Because it could be a 200-page document or a 10-page report. At what point are we going to kind of figure out, okay, this is the sandbox that we're going to remain in, and this is what we deem as success?
That question might be a good one for Mr. Doimus. It'd be a good question to really frame our work effort of what type of tangible work efforts or deliverables is City Council looking for?
Chair Escobedo, I don't know if Sam has any answer to that. Generally, I would think a recommended report. It's up to the commission how to decide that, but obviously something tangible like a report with a recommendation in terms of what was considered the steps that you've taken, how you got there in terms of outreach, where the information was provided, what steps were done, and then a recommendation based upon all the analysis, and then the recommendation based on that. I think that is most effective. I mean, that's how items on council or planning commission or any other meetings are done, with a report and a presentation and questions by council. I think that would be obviously an agendized item. Having someone from the commission maybe do that presentation. It's just one idea. I don't want that all, like I said, and off the top of my head. I don't know if Sam wants to add anything else to that, but that would be one way to go about it.
Yeah, so I concur with what John Doimus mentioned. I mean, ultimately, you are recommending what a civilian police review system looks like in Santa Barbara. And that's going to require, as all of you have mentioned, some level of research, some level of analysis, so that you can make a thoughtful recommendation to the council of this is what the Community Formation Commission recommends for a civilian police review system in Santa Barbara.
Thank you. Commissioner Sander, I don't think we've heard from you on this topic on what you would like to see and any particular special work groups, facilitators, topics.
Yeah, sorry, I've been mainly just listening. I think I agree with a lot of the previous commissioners of things that have been brought up. I think some of the most important things are, and we discussed this briefly at our last meeting, I was under the impression that we were under a stringent timetable, but I think that we don't need to necessarily have that kind of thinking. I think we need to be open to more of the process in general. I think we want something that clarifies, kind of gives us some direction, but nothing that means that we have to do something by such and such a date, I think would be good. I think we want to devote the proper time and energy to this that it takes. I do agree that getting a facilitator from, I'm forgetting the acronym, NACLOE. Thank you. I think would be good. I've been reading up on all of their stuff this week. And even with what the staff supplied, there's a lot in the attachments are a lot of information about just comparison to city. I would love to get more firsthand experience with that and hear what people have said. I think I also am curious, and I don't know who we necessarily talk to about this, but do we decide on terms of the actual budget for this entire process, or are we already limited into what we can be spending on our recommendation? Because that would also negate like some of the things that I think that we would be looking into. That's just a point of clarification.
So if,
go ahead.
Mr. Ramirez, if I may, and I hope that this is on point, but I think for this discussion, it would be helpful to know what our ideal request would be, and then we could go to City Council, and at that point, we would have a better idea of what the budget was, rather than us diminishing what our requests are at the front end, and maybe we would have gotten a little bit more support, facilitators or otherwise. So Mr. Ramirez, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
You're correct. As Ariel Colon mentioned last week, the council didn't give a specific dollar toward your efforts, but they knew there was going to be cost involved. And we know that facilitators, often aren't cheap or often aren't free. We know that some of the analysis that you may need may have a cost associated with it. So, I won't say that you have a blank check, but there isn't a set dollar amount that you have that you need to live within. Of course, we'd ask you to be reasonable with some of your requests, and then we'll just work through them as needed. If I need to go to council for an initial set of dollars to get us started, I'm happy to do that, and just kind of go from there. And just in addition to what Commissioner O'Gorman asked, with us being in the orange tier, it'll actually allows for meetings of 25 or less people, or 25% of a venue's capacity, whichever is fewer. So based on my count, we might be there, folks. I might actually get to see you in real life.
That could be exciting.
I'll work with staff on that to see, what we can do, but that's exciting. So I'll
at least once, And then at some point, if we keep going in this direction, we could also have a community meeting, or ourselves have a commission meeting, but it's in the community, inviting comment.
So I'll let you continue your discussion.
Commissioner Killebrew and then Commissioner Rodriguez.
Absolutely. I actually wanted to touch base on the meeting in person aspects. I think it's great, but I'm wondering if there can also just be a hybrid, because there may be some folks that are, may have a incompromised or compromised immune system. There may be folks that may not feel comfortable meeting in person, and I just want to make sure that we provide that space or make a hybrid so that people feel comfortable and able to, show up fully to a space without having any other, feelings or emotions about being in person. And so I just wanted to name that and make sure that, we create that space so people also feel comfortable, and then also be as present as possible.
Great point. Point made. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rodriguez.
Also, I wonder if we can continue to make this accessible so that if we are going to stream it and then post it on YouTube or have it on channel 18, but make it possible for public commenters to call in and just make this as accessible as possible.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Wood, I'm not sure if you've had the opportunity to comment.
I appreciate the time. I am excited to hear what everyone, all the ideas that everyone is bringing forth today. I also agree a facilitator coming in is a very good idea to keep us on point. Having said that, Commissioner Escobedo, you're already doing a wonderful job keeping us on point, so thank you for that. I do like the idea of what Commissioner Rodriguez said, saying, having kind of a framework of this takes about 3 months, this takes about 3 months, so that we can stay, within our time frame. I'm wondering, and maybe this is what Commissioner Rennell was talking about, if we can get maybe some examples of reports that have been given to other city councils, or just so we can see, I mean, maybe that's part of some of these subcommittee groups that we can look into those, find multiple examples of what kind of finished product we're looking for, or what we need to be doing. I look forward to meeting everyone in person and also having that opportunity to be accessible to everyone as well, and maybe getting this on channel 18 as that individual had offered. But thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kilbrew?
Yeah, I wanted to maybe do some clarification, because I'm hearing a lot of things of like, there's certain things that we should read, and also I'm a huge fan of these subcommittees. And so I'm wondering if there is a way, if we already have certain documents that we want to read ahead of time, and after, of course, I'm sure after we have this presentation by John Doimus, we'll probably have more information to consume. Is there a way to break into certain groups, or is everybody reading everything? Just wondering if we can just jump into that in preparation for our next meeting, because already there has been so many resources that have been shared, and I'm down to read everything, but at the same time, I don't know if other people are as well, given their time constraints and everything else that's going on in the world, because there's a lot of life happening right now. So I just wanted to say, maybe this is an opportunity to start off with some subcommittees to just start with reading some of these documents, great documents that were mentioned.
Are there any specific work groups that come to mind when we talk about breaking up and maybe doing some initial research?
If I can continue to take space, apologies. Commissioner Alonso also mentioned surveys and community surveys and data. And so I'm wondering if there can be a subcommittee that can look at other cities and what data they collect, and see if there's a certain benchmark that we could also perhaps, bring and start collecting, or, make a suggestion to collect for the city of Santa Barbara. I think that could be a fascinating find, in my opinion. Again, the reading, the research, I would hope that we all could be able to, but I understand that could be hard. I say a lot. That can be hard for folks who have busy lifestyles and work and stuff like that. So I would say maybe we have a working group that can dive into some of these documents, or split it up a little bit and help us to digest it a little bit more. Those are the only two that come to mind. I'm sure there'll be more probably after this next presentation, but I'm just trying to get us into it as well as we're building, because we're kind of building the sailboat as we sail at this current moment in time. So trying to just help us move along in that process. That's my thoughts, 2 cents.
No, I like that analogy too. It's pretty apt. Commissioner O'Gorman?
Yeah, just in terms of the research, I guess just having looked at some of the documents we've been given, and then also things over the years that I've looked at, I mean, really, and we'll hear more from Mr. Doimus, but it boils down to a few different types of systems that exist now. So, and Jordan, I don't know if you're Commissioner Kilbrew, if you're thinking of, like separate groups for each type of system, or maybe hybrids. Also looking at, we're in a unique position here because there is an existing Fire and Police Commission, how the possibility of, having some expansion of that. So, there's so many so many examples. And then the other thing, and I'm not quite sure how to articulate this, but it's always sort of loomed for me when this issue comes up, and that some of the most horrendous incidents that have happened, at least in the last year, happen in cities that have quite extensive police review committees and systems. And so keeping in mind, maybe as we're looking for ourselves, what do we need to do to enhance a system? You know, I mean, it's because, again, for whatever reason, you know, these horrible things happen in places that have wonderful systems. So not that anybody thinks it's a panacea to begin with, but just keeping that in mind. And then the other thing, just before I forget it, maybe we can do this at the next meeting, but what I'd love to hear from everyone is kind of like when a jury goes into deliberations. I don't know if any of you have been on juries. I have a couple times. That you take a straw poll at first and just, you know, so just to hear like maybe 1.5 minutes from everybody, like if you had to come up with a system now, what would it look like? And just where you're at now. I would find that interesting, with knowing that we're not wedded to that, but you know.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Chavez?
Thank you for bringing up those great points, Commissioner O'Gorman. I also want to reiterate what you had said of like these systems that we're being given are still failing somehow. And so I really do want to challenge us to, you know, research these systems, but also to take whatever information we may get through surveys and community input, and also from our own research, and try to think of new systems, new ways that, again, like you said, may either enhance those other systems or be completely different from those. So I really do want to challenge all of us to think a little bit outside of those, because those have already been researched, they've been implemented, and they're still failing. Secondly, because we are still in an online remote format, is there a way to share documents, or what's the best way, I guess, to share documents between all of the staff? Would that be via email? Is that best? Are we allowed to use Google Documents or another secure format to share these resources with each other? And if possible, if we are able to use either a form of like Google Drive, would we be able to, once we are in our own commissions, would we be able to maybe just summarize each of those documents that we share with each other so we don't all have to go through and read them? That could be an option. But yeah, I'm just not sure if there are any other options or the best ways, I guess, to share documents.
That's a really good question, Commissioner. Mr. Doimis or Mr. Ramirez, what is, I know for other commissions, it's you email the staff and they disseminate it, but is there an alternative to that, a Google Drive or a shared drive where we could store and share documents?
Staff can look into that if it's possible. You know, I guess in the beginning right now, when we look into that, email would be the best to staff, and then it could be disseminated. Just the key of keeping track of this too is be aware that such sharing of documents can be subject to Public Records Act request. So whatever is shared, you know, could be in the public. One idea we even discussed internally, Sam and I and Lieutenant Hill, was, you know, the website and providing all the documents that you want to share on the website, not only for all the commissioners to look at, but even members of the public as well. So it's already there. So at least for the first meeting, if there are documents that want to be shared, I would email it through staff, through Sam and the chair, and then we can disseminate it to the entire commission. And I do want to reiterate what Commissioner Sanders said, that in terms of recognizing that, you know, it's a lot of work now putting that kind of pressure. The key is a lot of information, and the only input I can give is the organization is key. And from what we hear is there's a desire for facilitator, but also these facilitators can also do outreach at the same time and provide statistics and giving that, and then helping the facilitator, helping this commission formulate a report, and then a presentation, to council. That could be one way to go about that. So it is a lot. I also will share some more information as we get it. I will share a report out of Phoenix in 2020. Phoenix, I know it's a different state, but a large city. They were looking at creating a civilian review commission, and you'll see all the information, the facilitation there. They even included job descriptions of different staff that assist different type of models, auditors, what they look like, what the job requisites are for that, investigators, etc. So there is a lot out there, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of documents, and we do need to keep track of that for the public. So emails, at least for now, and staff will work and get back in terms of doing a larger share of that.
Commissioner Rachel Johnson.
Thank you. Yeah, that was actually great, because I was going to say I'm really looking forward to the presentation that we're going to get tonight as well. But just a quick point or question before that, is forming subgroups something we can do tonight, like make a motion and vote on, even though it's not agendized? Or, because it sounds like, right, people are kind of ready to maybe start thinking, what are the immediate groups that we need? But is that something we can even do? Like, we could move to the presentation and then maybe decide on that before we adjourn?
Mr. Doymus?
Yeah.
In terms of, yes, Chair Escobedo, Commissioner Johnson, it would be better to have that at least agendized for the public, and then to provide what the subgroups would be exactly. I would think we would want to agendize that for the next meeting and have that done. So it would be the proper way to go about it.
So I will work with the vice chair and staff to make sure that that's a part of the next agenda.
Great.
I do have a question. Are we allowed to have a discussion about it at least, or be like without a motion, or do we just keep on after we see this civilian police review systems?
Commissioner Killebrew, no, this item's for you to have a discussion on all this. So this is kind of wide open to formulate ideas, etc. So if you can kind of formulate something now and then formally vote on it in the next meeting, but we've kind of left that open to be able to be done.
Thank you, Mr. Doymus. I think that would be great after we see this, presentation, and then see what groups we could form so that we can get started. My opinion.
Thank you. I saw Commissioner Rodriguez, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it's more about process, and Doymus knows more than we do about process. But I'm noticing on the agenda there isn't a new business listed on the agenda. So if there were, this would be the time where we would add it. So, and it's too late to say, are there any changes to the agenda? But normally, for process, this is when we would say, let's add, what do you think about adding this subgroup?
If I can suggest, I think we've been brainstorming a lot. So, and then we may do a little more after Mr. Doymus's presentation. But there's probably going to be enough conceptually for Gabe and Anna for the next meeting, to formulate the item.
That's a great point. And for the next meeting, when we come back, if what work groups we do suggest are not the ones that you might have been thinking of or wanted after the presentation, we can change it at that time too. And we can definitely formulate the work groups to meet our needs for next meeting. So that's a great point, Commissioner O'Gorman, sorry.
That's okay.
Any other comments from commissioners?
I just had one point, Chair. It was brought up, I think, by Commissioner Johnson and a couple of you about a facilitator. So if you would like staff to move forward with that, if I can get that in the form of a motion, and I can present something to the commission at our next meeting.
Is there a motion to ask staff to move forward with seeking a facilitator for our commission?
I'll move for a motion to
I
get a
want to,
facilitator.
I want to second the motion, but with a directive that we search for a facilitator, as has been discussed, that can potentially do other services as well, like a scientific survey, or like come prepared by our next meeting, or like by the time we get the facilitator, because to Commissioner O'Gorman's point, right, the RFP process, like these things take time to like work the negotiated contract, that kind of stuff. Just a directive to find someone that can do all of the things that we just discussed, as well as maybe even show up with a proposal for a timetable in hand for us to move as quickly as possible.
Is that in your motion, Commissioner Wood?
Yes, that is all in my motion.
We have a motion. Absolutely, Commissioner Lesnar Buxton.
Can we look for a facilitator who represents a minority group?
That is a great suggestion. If the motion maker and the seconder would like to amend their motion to incorporate that the facilitator is a member of a minority group.
I would move to add that to the motion.
Is that okay with the seconder?
Seconded.
Just for clarification, who seconded?
I believe it was Commissioner Rachel Johnson.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Oh,
Is that, Mr. Ramirez, is that the end of this item, or did you need
Yes.
more feedback?
No, that's the end of this item. And we'll now, if that's okay with the chair, we'll now turn it over to John Doimus, who will present the civilian police review systems. And I spoke with Mr. Doimus earlier, and we don't want it to be 20 minutes of him just talking. You're more than able to, I think John mentioned this, if you have a question or need some clarification or you want to expand on something, feel free to throw it in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat feature and I can interrupt them, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask if needed. Okay.
Thank you, Sam. Yes, feel free to interrupt, no problem. I presented this originally in July to the City Council, and I think it's important for at least the commission to hear some options. If you really break this down, it's a lot to review, because I view it like a Rubik's Cube. There's so many aspects to this, right? There's different types of models, four main ones Nicole talks about, but it goes beyond that component. It also talks about how are these commission members selected. I think, for example, in a city that like Santa Barbara that has each district, does each council member get to appoint one? Do they all vote together? So there's a lot of things that can go into this, this model in terms of being as detailed as you want to be. So with that, I'll start and again, thank you for being here. First meetings are usually very hard, especially a brand new commission, and accomplishing a lot of the housekeeping was very impressive tonight. So we thank you for that, making it as easy as possible. With that, Sam, can we start the slides?
Just to confirm, you can see which screen can you see, John?
I just see the main one with the agenda.
Do you see it now? Give me 1 second.
No problem.
Don't know why it's not. I promise it was working earlier. How about this, Chair? Can we take a 5-minute break while I prep this?
That's perfect. Let's take a 5-minute recess. Well, let's say 7 minutes. We'll return at 8 p.m.
Sure, thank you. All right, John, let's see what's going on. So you can't see it on. So John, what do you see? John Doimus, are you there?
I'm here, Mr. Ramirez. Are you trying to share something to the screen?
Yeah, what do you, let me know what you see. Is it
I'm still
black?
I'm still seeing the agenda.
Commissioner Alonso, do you see the new PowerPoint?
Still can't see it. All I can see is the agenda still on my screen. Oh, there it is.
Okay, we're good. All right. Okay. Thank you. So you should now see what is, all right, perfect. Nothing like good old technology with all eyes watching. Just to confirm, commissioners, you now should be able to see the what is civilian oversight. All right. I
Yeah, I see it.
apologize. I apologize for the technical difficulties.
It's all good, Sam. Thank you for keeping us on track and keeping us going. So we appreciate all the admin support. So thank you.
It's a two-way street, guys. It's a two-way street. All right. So we are returning to order, Chair. I believe.
Correct.
John Doimus, I believe you are ready to go, buddy.
I am. Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you, Commission. So the first slide, I think everyone's familiar with. What is civilian oversight? It's community members or experts that are not in any way affiliated with the police department that oversees and reviews the activities, and they're accountable to what a public expects the police department to be in terms of doing no harm, protecting the health, safety, and welfare of everyone in the community at all times. Next slide, please. So to give a little bit of background, the civilian review can kind of be split up into three eras. The first one is in terms of early efforts at establishing modern civilian oversight, kind of mimicked, if you read some of the material, review type of body commissions. An example of this is our Fire and Police Commission. They didn't really examine so much policies, but they did have some power that may surprise you. Originally, our Fire and Police Commission had incredible power. They could appoint the police chief. They could set the salaries. They even had the ability to hire fire officers. So they had some great power. And that's where you would see a lot of that entail. Not so much in terms of policies or investigations or misconduct. It was more in terms of finance and who's going to be placed in that position. And after the Civil Rights Act in 1964 and the Civil Rights Movement, you started seeing an emergence of investigative models of civilian oversight, looking into specific cases of misconduct, reporting on that. But the numbers weren't great. Not many police departments across the country really turned over to this model. It wasn't after the Rodney King incident in the 1990s when you started seeing a presence of more investigatory, auditor, monitor type of and hybrids, where the civilian review boards are looking not only at individual disciplinary cases or investigations, actually I should say disciplinary, but investigations, but also looking ahead in terms of policing, in terms of reviewing policies to see what's outdated. How do you look at accountability, et cetera. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, there were less than 40 civilian oversights in 1990. There were over 150 as of the summer, 33 alone in California. The anticipation is if we saw a growth from 1990 to over 3 times, we can imagine the recent events in the last few years where that will be going. I can imagine that number quadrupling or even much more going. So, communities all across the country are having the conversation that we're having today. And as we see in the past, these civilian boards were established in response to community concerns about police accountability. That's exactly how this oversight commission was formed, based on that mantra. As I mentioned onset, no two civilian oversight commissions are alike. They kind of tailor their needs to the community of what are the issues. And so what are the issues plaguing this community? When we say there's no two alike, there could be a setup of how they're constructed, how the board members are selected, what are their mandates, what are their staffing, what do they specifically review? Most civilian oversights have a lot of these common features. I'll kind of go over a few of them right here. Accepting and referring complaints. Right now, the California Penal Code section 832.5 requires the police department to develop a process to accept complaints from the community. Members of the public can drop off complaints to the police department, to the city and the city clerk's office if they want to. But a potential aspect from these commissions allowed to receive complaints from members of the public. They can monitor and audit internal affairs investigations. When that is, that means they're actually not conducting the investigations themselves, but they can be looking at two ways. First of all, looking to see if there are any trends or any major concerns, or actually kind of reviewing the complaints themselves to see the final results, the findings of it. Commissions can also investigate complaints, as we'll talk on, where they actually do the complaints, whether they do them solely or parallel to a police department, we'll get into. They also can conduct reviews on police misconduct in general, that after a finding is done by, let's say, an investigator, whether it's by the police department or by the commission itself, they can review that misconduct. Next slide, please. They also, we kind of had this discussion in the last agenda item about how do we get community engagement and how do we get information to each other and to the people. And as technology grows, that's becoming easier and easier in a way and should be utilized. So a lot of these commissions are developing stuff that wasn't in existence in the 90s you'll see today. How do they report to the community on efforts? How is this information given? How is it posted out? How do you invite engagement on that? And then the final one is recommending improvements to policies, practices, and trainings. Our police department has several policies. The biggest in terms of length is our policy manual, which is over 1,000 pages. It's produced by a company called Lexipol that does that. We add on stuff to it to fit the community needs or specific department needs. But an example is them reviewing such a policy, making recommendations to training. Our department over the summer removed chokeholds in response to, now there's state law to that, in response to the incidents of police brutality over the summer. Next slide, please. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what is the goal of the civilian oversight, and what is the goal in terms of what the mandate you're given, what this commission, the recommendation you make, what do you want them to do? A lot of boards have all these goals in mind: eliminating bias, implicit bias, deterring misconduct, demystifying the police internal affairs investigations. Many people don't know what that entails, how that looks, how it goes about, and kind of making the public aware of the process is one of the most important things into that. And providing an avenue for community involvement is key to that as well, in terms of getting input. Next slide, please. So as we talked about NACOL, which is the National Association of Civilian Oversight in Law Enforcement, they identify 4 main models, which we'll kind of go over with. The investigation focused, review focused, and auditor monitor focused, and a hybrid model. I'll go over each one now. Next slide, please. So investigation focus can be constructed in many different ways. It could be that this type of commission does the investigation themselves, independent of the department. They may replace a police department internal affairs. They may duplicate it in terms of running parallel, where they do the investigation themselves or review the investigation and report it to the commission. It is staffed by non-civilian investigators, non-police or civilian investigators. It's important that they have training. They have to be licensed under the Business Professions Code to be an investigator. It is probably the most costly commission next to auditor monitor due to the staff costs in terms of having higher paid investigators, getting transcripts of interviews, et cetera. So that's one of the deterrents of it, but one of the benefits of it, of course, it generally provides confidence from the community in terms of that there's a separate investigation outlet looking into misconduct. Also, investigators can have the power, if the commission is constructed, where they can issue subpoenas or make findings in investigations. And subpoena power is one very important power to have, in which you can require a witness to participate in an interview. Next question. Next slide, please. Review focus is where, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of these police commission started from. One aspect is they can review the final product. So it's the police department doing the investigation and the commission reviewing the investigation themselves and the findings. They can make recommendations in terms of deficiencies you see in the investigation. They also can review police departments in terms of policies and practices and make recommendations to the department. They can hold hearings, like I said, for the public to get input. It's the least costly. It's been around. It's been the model that's been around for the longest. But it also, has a kind of generally a broad authority to look at many different things. So that's one of the positive inputs, as well as the cost. Next slide, please. And then a newer trend is the audit and monitor focus. Usually requires hiring of staff as well to specifically review policies, looking at trends, recommendations on policies, getting input from the community, tailoring those policies to the specific goals and issues involving the community. It also can look at broad, like I said, broad patterns of complaints and investigations, discipline, for example. And discipline is a very interesting thing to look at on different levels, right? In terms of, one thing is discipline being issued justly in terms of there's a punishment for the crime in this issue, but also looking at it from a perspective, is there any kind of unequal treatment between officers themselves based on gender, race, etc. So there's many ways to look at in terms of discipline. What they would do is maybe establish a matrix and see how that discipline looks. They can participate or monitor investigations, but they don't actually conduct the investigation themselves. The goal usually with these auditor monitor focus is to make long changes in terms of departmental changes, making recommendations on how you're doing training. So it's goal-oriented and forward-thinking in terms of, what are the goals and how do we want the police department to look 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now in terms of making their recommendations. Next slide, please. The hybrid system is the most recent type of system where it's basically not just putting a type of commission, its powers and its authorities or its purview in one box. It could have dual functions. Depending on what that looks like, it could be very costly if it's investigation and auditing, but it at least can have different views. It could be also constructed in some ways. It could be constructed where maybe it doesn't have to be one commission. There could be two. There could be one that's solely focused on the auditing monitor model. There could be another one that's focused on investigations. There could be one that's focused on review oriented. So it doesn't have to be all encompassed in one commission. It could be split across into 2 or 3 different type of commissions or boards. And the key again is, what is the need that we're trying to, or the goal that's trying to be achieved. Next slide, please. I kind of want to go into the existing laws and practices we have. The first one, I have Lieutenant Sean Hill with me here too. If there are any questions, we'd be happy to also answer them as well. But we have the Santa Barbara Police Department Professional Standards Division. That is our internal affairs investigator. Right now we have a sergeant that does internal affairs, as well as Lieutenant Hill, who oversees that. This is new. We usually had it at 1 position, but now we have it to 2. There's 2 ways that the IA sergeant gets a complaint. It could be from a member of the public, as we talked about, we have a complaint form online that they could fill out and provide, like I said, to the police department and city clerk, or it could be an internal investigation that another officer saw something that was a violation of policy, that a supervisor saw something. So there's 2 general ways that an investigation starts within the police department. The investigator will investigate the complaint, following the police officer bill of rights, which I'll get into shortly. What they will do then is make findings of any policy violation, and usually it's either sustained policy violation or not sustained if there's no finding, but they do not recommend discipline. They just simply review if the facts of the case and determine based on those facts if there's a policy violation. As I mentioned, we have currently a board of fire and police commissioners. Their mandates out of the city charter. They make recommendations to the police department in terms of the hiring, of a police chief, recommendations of, it could be policy operations they can make recommendations on. One of the things with Fire and Police Commission, and it's a challenge, is there's no budget associated with that, but they do have meetings with the police department. They do have monthly meetings where the police chief will provide reports. They may have new items where they want to look at an issue and analyze it to make a recommendation on that. They also act as a quasi-administrative judicial body in the sense they hear appeals on tows and dance permits. Dance permits are nightclubs' ability to basically have a nightclub where people can go dancing, and if it's causing a nuisance around the community, if there's violations, they can appeal that. So so they do hear some permits as well. The Civil Service Commission, this is important for everyone to recognize. A lot of people may assume that these oversight commissions also dole out discipline. No, not necessarily. Usually for a city, it's a Civil Service Commission that does that. That's under their charter. They have the sole authority to hear discipline. So in terms of, I said dole, but I should change that. Here's the process for that. If a IA investigator makes a finding of a violation, it'll be given to a police captain. The police captain will then review it and make a recommendation of discipline and give a notice of intent, what it's called, and that here's the discipline I propose for your actions. Because all the police officers and most people in the department are classified employees, meaning they have civil service rights to go to the Civil Service Commission. Only a select few don't. That's usually high-level management, the police chief, the captains. If they choose to go, the next step is once they get that notice of intent, they can have what's called a Skelly hearing. That can be done with the police chief or another department head, and they get to plead their case why this discipline should not be issued. There's no right to have witnesses. It's not a trial. Essentially, they can bring a representative, but they essentially provide their reasoning. The hearing officer of that Skelly hearing can then determine they want to uphold the discipline, reduce it in any way. And it's called Skelly because it's based off a case that has determined that public employees, so police officers are included, have a property interest in that job. What does that mean? They have expectation of continued employment. So they have expectation it can come to work every single day. But if you want to take that right away, they have a right to due process. So the first step to that due process is a Skelly hearing. The second step is, let's say the discipline is still being upheld in some way, and they want to appeal that. They can choose to go to the Civil Service Commission. And what does the Civil Service Commission? They hear 4 types of discipline: a termination, a suspension, or I should say 3, or a demotion. Those are the 3 type of things they can hear. They can't hear anything else. They can't hear a written reprimand. Police officers have a right to go to Skelly for a written reprimand, but not to the Civil Service Commission. And the Civil Service Commission then tries and issues a final decision on the discipline. So for example, if there's a termination, the IA finds serious misconduct. There's a Skelly hearing. The police chief or another city department head determines that, yes, it's worthy of termination. I agree with the findings of the investigation. It goes to the Civil Service Commission. That acts like a trial. There's 5 commissioners. There's usually a hearing officer who doesn't get a vote. The hearing officer is a lawyer that's hired out to decide on motions and objections during the trial. There are witnesses that are sworn. It's a public Brown Act meeting. It's also a court reporter, and decisions issued by the commission on the discipline. A commission can overturn it, or they can sustain the discipline or reduce it. So it can go from, let's say, termination to upholding it, to reducing it to suspension, or saying no discipline at all. Next slide, please. As I mentioned here, the California Penal Code Section 832.5A, I mentioned that earlier. That is in terms of the departments are required to develop a process to receive complaints from the public. So if someone's alleging this officer lied or used excessive force or saw some misconduct, I saw this officer do this, they can go and file a report. And we have an obligation to accept that report and to look into it and to investigate it. It could be a cursory investigation. When I say that, it could be, let's say you have someone saying, I saw this officer conspire with Martians. We would still we still have to accept it, but we may not develop all the resources into that, versus something different where then you have to investigate that. Assembly Bill 953, that requires us to keep track in terms of any racial profiling incident reported to the Department of Justice that does a yearly report on this. And we have to be very specific in terms of what is produced in that report, in terms of down to categorizing what the profiling was. Was it based on race, gender, sexual orientation, etc. Senate Bill 1421, that's a major law that was passed 2 years ago. I want to get into it a little bit. Police records are privileged. So personnel files, investigations are privileged materials. In fact, in criminal law or civil law in the state of California, in order to get access, let's say a criminal defendant has to file a Pitchess motion. So what's that? I'm arrested. I claim that the police officer lied in the police report, that he misrepresented what the facts were there. And I want to impeach that. And I want to see that, my lawyer wants to see if this officer has a history of lying to reduce his credibility and to show that, yes, there's a chance that this officer lied during this report. What the public defender or the defense lawyer can file is what's called a Pitchess motion. It's named after a sheriff out of LA in the 1970s, 80s, and it's based off a case that bared his name. And with that, the lawyer would file what's called an affidavit asserting that this is the factual scenario that occurred. It's a very low bar, and the judge would then either grant the motion or deny it. If it grants the motion, what the next step happens is that the custodian of records, which usually is the IA sergeant, and the lawyer defending the police officer in that case go into the judge's chambers and they go over the entire personnel record. And they determine if there are any incidences of the officer lying. And if they are, the first step is they give the defense lawyer the names. Now it has to be under seal, so it's protected when the order is given that the defense lawyer can't disclose this to the universe, and the names of people who have filed complaints of dishonesty. And the lawyer can track that down and investigate that. If the lawyer can't do that, they can come back and say, I need more information, I need the entire file. And the judge can decide then to give the file and look into that dishonesty issue and then impeach the officer on the witness stand.
Hey, John,
yes.
Excuse me for interrupting. One of the commissioners asked, who are the members of the Civil Service Commission, and how are they selected?
Sure, they have to be electorates of the city. They have to live in the city. They cannot be affiliated with the city in any way, so they can't be city employees. And they're selected by city council. So just like all our general commissions are.
Cool. Thank you for that, John.
You're welcome. So with the Pitchess is recognized in California criminal court as well as civil court, where it's not recognized in federal court. If you want access, if it's a civil rights case and you want access to police officers' personnel files, you don't need to file Pitchess. You just ask for it in discovery. So back to Senate Bill 1421. This took a big chunk out of Pitchess. What it is I don't know if everyone's familiar with the California Public Records Act, but you're allowed, members of the public can request city documents because it's all transparency. It's a sunshine law. What is the sunshine law? Let the light in for the city to see records from that are the people's business. There are a few exceptions to that. One example could be personnel records or investigations. This Senate bill said there are 4 types of investigations that the police have. Forget Pitchess and the laws under that and the California Penal Code and the government code that protect that. There are 4 categories that the public should have the right to see. That is that anytime there's a discharge of a weapon, when there's a claim of investigation of excessive force, when there is an investigation regarding sexual assault, and when there's an investigation involving dishonesty. In those 4 categories of investigation, members of the public are entitled to see everything. When I see everything, I mean everything. Recordings of interviews, reports, disciplinary reports. So that's what they're allowed. Now, if it's an active investigation, the department does not have to turn that right away. They generally have 60 days. And then at that point, if there's going to be a hearing on that matter, they don't have to turn it over for 18 months, but they have to check in every 180 days to see if the matter is over with. So let's say there's a criminal trial or there's a civil trial, they don't have to turn that until at least 18 months if it's over. But that bill is very important because some of the most severe categories of misconduct, members of the public can see that. The Police Officer Bill of Rights was passed in the 1970s. It's in Government Code sections 3300 to 3310. Firefighters also have a similar Bill of Rights that was enacted maybe 10, 15 years ago, if I can remember, where it allows certain protections for police officers when it comes to investigations. So here's an example of some of them. If it's an investigation, let's say someone who has an authority to act, let's say a sergeant or above, sees a violation and recognizes it's a violation, right? Or we're put on notice that there's a potential violation. We have a year from that date that we're put on notice to issue discipline. If we don't, we can't. The police department cannot do anything on that. Another example is that police officer has a right to a representative during an interview. They have a right to be interviewed at a reasonable time and place. They have a right to be apprised of the charges against them, who's going to be doing the investigation, and name, rank, and title, and no more than 2 people in the room conducting the investigation. They have a right to record a copy of their interview. In terms of getting the material, the first time they're interviewed, if you're a subject officer, you don't have a right to any of the investigatory materials. If you're interviewed a second time, there's a recent case that the officer is entitled to everything. So that's very important for investigators to try to get it right the first time. You don't want to conduct a second interview because at that point you have to turn over all your material, your working materials. So these are standard Bill of Rights that must be followed. If there's a willful violation of them, the city's liable to $25,000 fine plus attorney's fees, plus a potential of any discipline being issued overturned. Another issue, is another point on my slide up there is Brady versus Maryland. This is important out of a Supreme Court case that criminal defendants have a right to any exculpatory information. So for example, let's say we have an officer that has a sustained dishonesty charge in their file. The district attorney's office has an obligation, without the other side, the defense attorney even asking for the material, to provide that information to the defense attorney. And why this fits the police department is that there have been recent cases that talk about the police department and the district attorney's office being part of the same prosecution team. So there needs to be a developed method between the 2 offices to share that information, that if we have a finding of an officer being dishonest or an officer using excessive force, we need to let the district attorney's office know that, so then they can, if they have a case with that officer who is involved in any way, that they must notify the defense attorney of that. The next point there is the United States Code section 1983. This is a statute where in federal court civil rights claims are being filed in terms of deprivation of due process, everything else in terms of that. So that's the statute that police officers or departments are generally sued on in federal court when they deprive people of their rights. There's something that's been talked about in terms of qualified immunity and bill passage about eliminating that. I do want to mention this, that public employees, so it's not just police officers, public employees are entitled to qualified immunity, meaning that if their actions were reasonable in terms, then they can't be sued solely as individuals. Doesn't mean the city or county or any other agency is off the hook. It just means that individual officer is not responsible. However, if their conduct is so outside the norm, it was not reasonable in any way, was not within the scope of their employment, then they could be potentially be sued individually too, liable individually. Next slide, please. Oh, that was it. Questions? Sorry for speeding through that fast. I know there was a lot of material and I wanted to recognize the time and I wanted to open it up to the commission for questions.
Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Rodriguez?
So Attorney Doimus, I'm looking at the document that was included in our packet, and it lists 5 attachments, but I don't think I have those attachments or maybe I missed it. So I'm wondering, are those attachments listed on the commission website?
They are, Commissioner Rodriguez. On the commission website, it was a large file, so it was broken into the report and then the attachments.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and with that, the attachments in terms of one of them is comparing different cities in terms of what type of commissions they have, and large and small, trying to get a feel for total feel in terms of cities, trying to balance geographical regions, and how they, what type of budget do they have, what their makeup is, how they're selected. So that's part of the attachments.
I forgot to precede that question with thank you for that thorough presentation. It was a lot of information in a condensed amount of time, and I love the report that you provided as well. That's really helpful. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez. Commissioner Alonso?
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. So on this breakdown of the different review systems, it seems like there's a lot of discussion, and it was helpful to see like the different costs associated with them. And my hope is that whatever we turn over as part of our recommendations, because it's extremely important, that it has details, like a lot of details on how much we think it should cost. I think it was mentioned before, like what kind of position would we be looking to hire if there's going to be folks that we need to hire to do investigative work or review and audits and that kind of monitoring. So hopefully we turn over something really comprehensive that really lays out how much a system that we recommend is going to cost. But I'm also interested in learning a little bit more about what the cost is of not having a system like this, and getting some more information on, we've just heard about how individuals can't be held liable, but the city and the police department, who gets their budget from the city, are on the hook. So I would love to see more data if we can find it, or in our research of what the cost is of not having civilian oversight, as much as we're having the conversation about how much this thing's going to cost, and then do our cost benefit analysis that way. And then apologies, one real question this time. I was reviewing attachment 3, and for those of you who didn't get the attachment, it is on the commission website, on the city website. But it's a 3-page document called Major Characteristics Comparison of Civilian Review System. It's really great. It's stunning to me that there are 482 cities in the state of California, and fewer than 3.1% of them have any form of civilian review of police. So just to stress the importance of our work here and the decision before the city council, this work would put Santa Barbara in a small category of cities on the vanguard of civilian review of municipal police departments. But back to the attachment 3, the document's great, but there are, I think, a total of 16, I don't know, on NACOL I thought there was 23, but in the documents it said there are 16 cities in California that have police oversight. Only about 11 of those cities are similar in population size to Santa Barbara. So we have coverage in this document of big cities like San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland, Los Angeles, and San Diego. But I'm also interested in review of police systems of sizes similar to Santa Barbara. So we have Berkeley, Claremont, Davis, Englewood, Novato, Palo Alto, and Santa Cruz represented here in this attachment, but we're missing a summary of police review systems of National City, Richmond, Sausalito, and Tulare. Sorry, I'm not from California, so I don't know how to say the name of that city. But would it be possible for us to get summarized information on those additional cities that do have police review systems, what kind they have, the same like cut of information that's available in that document?
Sure. When we put the document together, there was it wasn't even a purposeful selection, but just to give an example. So yes, correct. Not every department, every city was included, but I could certainly include one where it's every city in California that's covered. Absolutely.
Thank you, Commissioner Alonso. Additional questions from the commission? Commissioner O'Gorman? You're muted.
Sam, did you mute her?
I did not.
I didn't mute her. Just
Yeah.
took Commissioner O'Gorman off the screen. I don't know.
And it's not allowing me to unmute. It says you're self-muted, Commissioner O'Gorman.
Any other commissioner questions while we're waiting for Commissioner O'Gorman?
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Jeez. I guess I'm Zoom adept. I'm just not GoToWebinar adept. Okay, a couple things, and one might have been shared at the first meeting, or maybe it was at one of the city council meetings, but it would be good to have from the police department in whatever format you can, just kind of some numbers or breakdown of what your current internal affairs office does, and maybe going back 5 years or something with types of complaints, whatever can be shared. It would be good to see just that volume, and kind of, along the lines of what Commissioner Alonso was saying, we are a relatively small city. So, I mean, it would be good to have a sense of that. And then the other thing I kept forgetting to mention, the interim police chief, Barney Malikian, and I knew him when he worked at the county. He was actually under President Obama. He was appointed the director of community-oriented policing for several years under Eric Holder. And so, he's kind of a wealth of information on these issues. And so I don't know if it's appropriate, or you guys, the executive committee, can talk about it, but maybe hearing from him at one of our meetings, just his perspective on all that. So.
Let me tell you, and the numbers are important. So for example, large cities have several investigators on their staff, right? And that's based on the data and the numbers that are provided of how many internal investigations are conducted versus a smaller city or that probably has less. So there isn't a need to have 10 or 20, maybe it's one on the appropriate number. So that is important information the commission needs to have. Thank you, Commissioner Gorman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Additional questions from the commission? Not seeing anyone. I have a couple of questions, Mr. Doimus.
Yes, Chair.
So the first is, in a couple of times in the report, you referenced the fact that we're a charter city. And so I'm wondering what effect that has on this process. Does that mean that we would ultimately need a citywide vote in order to amend the charter to allow for something like this police oversight body?
Potentially, yes. Every commission, not necessarily. We may not have to do that. For example, this commission wasn't formed without a charter, but potentially we would. That's a question I don't have the direct answer, so I don't want to speculate on. I can get that answer for you though. But if we do include in the charter, then yes, it would be subject to vote being placed in the ballot. But I will get that answer if a new commission has to be placed in the charter. or if it can't just be created and appointed by council.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd be really interested in what that would look like. And then the second question I have is, on page 5 of the staff report, you had mentioned that the auditor monitor focus system, it was a compromise between the community and police unions. And then it sparked the question, what role will the police union have in this process?
Well, you know, all I could say is a part of the process, you know, a lot of it is to have a dialogue, to be inclusive. You know, we haven't talked to the union yet in terms of this issue. There is case law that talks about when it comes to oversight, that it's not something subject to collective bargaining, but we haven't had that discussion. But you know, in terms of community buy-in, you know, from at least the materials that I've read, it's important that it comes across all parts. You know, buy-in meaning it's buy-in with the community, it's buy-in with the police officers, it's buy-in with members of the public, everything, to really have a truly successful program. That's what NACOL advises. That's what a lot of the materials that I've read advises. You know, that they have a seat at that table to have that meaningful discussion in terms of what this will look like. So it's important to have it's an important role, at least on the material that I've read and the research that I've done.
And so would that be with this commission? Would it be with city council? At what point, if their input is going to be taken into consideration, at which point of the process?
Oh, that's for this commission to decide, but obviously this commission, I'm assuming, is very open, wants to hear everything, and obviously could could engage in that and hear from that. So yes, please in any way, don't feel in any way you're precluded from that. From the research I've read, I encourage that to happen.
Thank you. My last question is also on page 5 of the staff report. It states that it's discussing the Santa Barbara Police Department Professional Standards Division, and it's speaking about the standard sergeant and the fact that it highlights that this position is independent, and that's why they're able to conduct these investigations. But the professional standard sergeant reports directly to the police chief. So my question is, if the police chief is under investigation, who does that position report to?
Well, if the police chief is under investigation, the person who is at least reviewing it or issuing discipline would be the city administrator. So what they would normally do is hire someone from outside the police department to investigate that matter.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I think those are all of my questions. Are there any additional questions from the commission or comments? Mr. Doimus, do we have to go to public comment for this item?
Yeah, we should, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay,
Mr. Ramirez?
Sure. Let me open it up to the public. If you are a member of the public and wish to comment on this presentation, please raise your hand in the chat feature. If you have any questions and you would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand in the chat feature. Seeing none, we should close the public comment portion, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Any closing comments on this item? Maybe takeaways or items that you'd like staff to come back with in future meetings, information based on what we heard today? All right, I'm not seeing anyone. Oh, Commissioner or Vice Chair Zepeda.
Yes, something that stood out was trying to figure out maybe we can simmer on this about like what our specific goal is and maybe creating like a plan surrounding that so that way we can like further figure out what each subcommittee is going to focus on based on what our like our large goal is.
Thank you. Commissioner Rodriguez, I think I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to just thank everyone for hanging in there. It's a long meeting, it's a late meeting, it's an important meeting, and we're all still very engaged. So thank you for the commissioners. Thank you to Vice Chair Zapeda and Chair Escobedo for taking on this leadership role, and for staff for providing all of this important information. So I feel really good about this commission.
I second that.
I echo that. Thank you so much. Any other comments before we close this item and move? Yep. Commissioner Rachel Johnson?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify because I think, yeah, with all that information, I want to sit with it a bit, and I think I will have some additional requests of information. So can we just confirm after this meeting what the steps are to get that done? Would we be emailing requests for information to the chair, the vice chair, and Mr. Ramirez? Or what would be the process for that?
Good question. I would say yes, that it would be chair, vice chair, and staff. But Mr. Doimus, if you want to add to that.
That's absolutely fine, and I will create a written procedure on the. It's very simple. It'll be one paragraph on placing an item on an agenda. But if you have a question, you can also do it the same way: chair, vice chair, and city and staff.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments, questions? All right, we'll close this item, and that is the last item on the agenda, I believe. So
It is, Chair, and just as an FYI, since we're going with the second Wednesday of the month, our next meeting will be on May 12th. I'll send you an Outlook invite for that. I'll try to clear up any confusion on the start time and work out any technical difficulties, but I thank you all for your patience and appreciate your input along the way.
thank you, everyone. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye,
Have a good
everyone.
night.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Good night, Madam Mayor.
Hi.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.